Chapter 8:13. Does she like to be immortal? Does she want power? What does she want to do most? What is she like? What does she hate? What does she dream? He finds that he doesn't know. Li Yunxin sits alone on the blue stone for an hour, like a silent statue. The dew of the night, and the mist of Dongting wet his hair and clothes, making his face look like it is also covered with mist. So when the moon is in the middle of the sky, he finally whispers, "Mountain." The thick mist above Dongting is suddenly dispelled, and the clear moonlight shines down. There is neither vibration nor loud noise. However, at the place where Mount June has collapsed in half, suddenly a mountain grows. The water in Dongting is surging, but it is also silent. Some kind of indescribable powerful force suppresses all the noise. It seems that the owner of the force doesn't want them to affect his state of mind. The new mountain is uprooted from Mount June, like a giant bamboo shoot straight to the sky. Grass and trees on this mountain wither, and flowers bloom and fall. It seems that thousands of years have passed in the blink of an eye. After 6 breaths, the growth of the mountain stops. It stands majestically in the lake, and the top has been surrounded by clouds and mist. Li Yunxin slowly raises his hand and gently grabs it. He whispers, "The essence of jade is the bone." A cloud of dust suddenly rises on the mountain, and begins to fall slowly. But the fog is not fog, but the earth and stones that originally covered the mountain. Because this mountain is so high and lonely, the earth and stones seem to fall very slowly, as if it is slowly removing the dust on it. When the earth and stones fall, the true appearance of the mountain is revealed. Its entire body was sparkling and warm. It is bathed in the moonlight, and reflects the moonlight, reflecting a large area of water around it. It is a jade mountain. It contains the aura of treasure, but the brilliance is restrained, like the king of the mountain. If there is another person here, he should realize that the jade essence of the whole land has been condensed by this mountain when he sees this mountain. From now on, there will be no jade in the world. After Li Yunxin spoke in a low voice, a misty green light appeared in front of his finger. Then he flicks his fingers, and the brilliance transforms into shape. In a thin layer of mist, the shape of a skeleton could be seen. Therefore, the jade mountain standing in the Dongting suddenly lost all its brilliance, and became pale and fragile. After another 3 breaths of time, the jade mountain collapsed, turning into a silver mist that shone under the moonlight. When the mist falls into the water of Dongting Lake, which has been dirty because of the catastrophe, becomes clear. When they landed on the shore, they turned into fine white sand. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. After resting for 2 breaths of time, he opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Snow." The white sand that fell by the lake, and the silver mist that fell into the lake suddenly turned into ice and snow. Ice and snow covered Dongting in a flash. By the time he exhaled, a bright mirror had already appeared in the 500 kilometers of the world. The ice was extremely cold and clear. Through the ice on the surface of the lake, one could see the bottom of the lake, as if the ice was only an illusion. The snow was also extremely white, without any impurities. The essence of water between heaven and earth was all captured by the divine power into this piece of ice and snow, even making every snowflake and every ice grain faintly glow. Take the essence of ice and snow. Li Yunxin stretched out his hand for the appearance. Then the ice and snow suddenly melted. Besides the jade bones, there were ice muscles, a natural body, and the moonlight gilded her with silver light. Li Yunxin stared at her for a while, and waved his hand to make clothes for her. As a result, her neck and face looked even more creamy under the contrast of the red dress. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Flowers." In this barren land, peach blossoms suddenly bloomed for 30 miles. The green leaves were green, and the flowers were red. This piece of pink fragrance made the moonlight stained with fragrance, so it became softer. Li Yunxin raised his hand, and picked a peach blossom from a cluster of branches in front of him. Then he pinched the peach blossom, and gently touched the cheeks of the beauty in front of him. Then her face turned red, and her lips turned pink. And the peach blossoms that were about to bloom for 30 miles also withered at this moment, leaving only a thin shadow. Li Yunxin stood up from the stone and walked down. He looked at her carefully for a while and sighed, "Wake up." About 2 seconds later, Red Lady's eyelashes trembled. Then she opened her eyes, and her chest began to rise and fall slightly. It was still early spring, but she breathed out white mist. She was stunned for a while because of the fusion of the completed soul and body. She stared at Li Yunxin in front of her, and then turned to look at the mist on Dongting, and the peach tree on the shore with only green leaves. After another 2 seconds, she said, I repaired your soul and made a new body for you. I created a new body for you, Li Yunxin said. But this way, your spirit will lose its fate with the world, and your demonic power will not be preserved. You are immortal now. If you don't like it, I can help you cultivate. I can help you return to the mysterious realm as soon as possible. Red Lady didn't speak, and tried to walk a few steps. The sole of the embroidered shoe transformed by Li Yunxin rubbed against the white sand, making a rustling sound. The first 2 steps seemed to be a little weak, because her legs and feet were soft. But she adapted quickly. She didn't want to stop as if she had just learned to walk. She walked to the lake first, and touched the lake with the tip of her shoe. Then she walked back and went around to the peach forest. Then she seemed to be interested in traveling, and walked to the depths of the peach forest. She was no longer a monster, so she couldn't avoid those branches with her supernatural power instinctively. Her clothes were occasionally caught, but she didn't stop. She just struggled hard, and the seemingly thin but extremely tough clothes got rid of the entanglement. Li Yunxin was looking at her, waiting for her to say something. But after waiting for a while, he found that Red Lady's figure had disappeared in the depths of the forest. He was stunned, and then he frowned and followed her. When he walked into the forest, the branches automatically avoided him. So it only took him a few dozen steps to see the former demoness. She didn't look left or right, nor did she stop walking. Her steps were neither too fast nor too slow. Obviously, she had completely adapted to this body. She was hurrying on with her journey, not sightseeing. Li Yunxin caught up with her. He accompanied her and asked in a low voice, What are you going to do? Where are you going? Red Lady looked at him from the side. At this time, there was a kind of mortal powerlessness on her face. But on this face, there was no resentment, not even a hint of eagerness. She just smiled and said, You must have a lot of things to do. I'm leaving. Where are you going? Li Yunxin frowned. Why are you leaving? This was the second time he had asked this question. Red Lady stopped and looked at him. She carefully looked at his face and gently sighed. I don't blame you. You fulfilled your promise and called me a new person. You're a new person. I like to be a human. And I like to live a human life. But now that I don't have demonic power and supernatural power, I can't help you and I'll become a burden. So I'm leaving. Who said? Li Yunxin paused and calmed himself down. I said I could ask you to recultivate. I'm too tired. Red Lady said. Li Yunxin stared at her. He subconsciously tried to explore the river of her fate. But he couldn't see it anymore. From the moment she came back to life, the fruit of fate had been cut off. He couldn't see her anymore. Well, Li Yunxin sighed again. You're immortal now. What should I do if you leave? You need to eat, drink, wear clothes and spend money to live in the world. There are no towns nearby except the city of Wei. It's spring now and it's cold at night. Where will you live? What do you live on? If you don't want to recultivate, go to the city of Wei. Pheasant made some over there. Red Lady suddenly raised her hand to fix his collar and stepped back. She looked at him seriously. I don't want to go to the city of Wei either. It's not good there. I can read, play the zither and write poems. I can go to teach. And then, I can get married. Get married? Li Yunxin laughed and then stopped. Who will you marry? There's no one better than you in the world. But there should be someone who can get by. Red Lady walked forward again. I know your newly molded body should be immortal. I can look for it slowly. I'll find the right one. The peach forest suddenly changed. The branches withered in an instant, as if they had experienced the baptism of years. Soon they turned into flying ashes. They swirled in the night wind, like a black fog that covered the sky and the sun. Red Lady didn't stop, but she was blinded. She raised her hand to wipe it. Li Yunxin stared at her and waved his hand. The black smoke disappeared without a trace. He followed her and stared at her sideways. If you want to use this method, You can call me, call me. I used to be the obsession of a ghost cultivator and gave you a lot of trouble, Red Lady said softly. I already know. She took another 3 or 4 steps. There's also Bai Yunshin. When we were at sea, I told her that I wouldn't live long. After I die, she'll accompany you. I don't want to break my promise. It's none of my business. Li Yunshin was furious. What do you mean by that? Is this kind of agreement valid without my knowledge? It's invalid. And I gave you this body. You want to get married. I gave you this body. Red Lady stopped and closed her eyes, raising her head. If you want to take it back, then take it back. I don't want to be a puppet. I don't want to live like a dream like before. Li Yunshin immediately raised his hand, but after taking a few deep breaths, he put it down again. I never take back what I give away. Red Lady sighed softly and opened her eyes. Then let me go. After saying this, she took another step forward. Li Yunshin stood in the same place and watched her walk for 6 or 7 steps. He suddenly snorted and followed her. But he didn't use his supernatural power, and just walked like a mortal. After they walked side by side for a while, Red Lady turned to look at him. She was about to say something when Li Yunshin sneered. The road is not yours. I'm willing to walk for fun. In fact, there was no road. After the city of Wei was burned, the fire spread to nearby areas and burned the surrounding area into a wasteland. A few days ago, Li Yunshin made the spring come back to earth within hundreds of miles. Then there was fluffy grass around. They walked on the grass, and the city of Wei was hidden in the darkness. Looking around, they didn't know which direction was north or south. They could only see a shadow on the horizon far away. That was the place that was not affected by the fire, and still retained its original appearance. Red Lady was walking in that direction. Li Yunshin hadn't been in a hurry like this for a long time. Although it was early spring nearby, it was still very cold at night. After a while, he saw the glimmer of the remaining snow in the distance. He knew that he was about to get out of the rejuvenated land. Dongting was some distance away from the city of Wei. Therefore, the gentle coolness in the night wind gradually became chilly. He frowned. In the dark of the night, the dark green spread into the distance. The trees and bamboos that were originally yellow and withered in the distance also glowed with vitality. The two of them remained silent. If someone saw them, they would think that they were Jianghu people who were walking at night. There was only the rustling of the grass under their feet, and the sound of the night wind passing through the distant forest. In this way, the sky in the east was a little bright. They had been walking for nearly 4 hours. Red Lady finally stopped. There was a path here gradually. The bamboo forest in the distance, and the forest further away, should be part of the former wild forest. So this road should be the road that people around the city of Wei used to take when they went to the forest. There were 3 blue stones beside the bamboo forest. The stones were very smooth, and there were only some dead leaves. She thought that when the city of Wei was still a prosperous and magnificent city, there should be pedestrians who often stopped here to rest. After a long time, the stones became smooth. She breathed out a few mouthfuls of mist and slowly sat on the stone. Li Yunshin stopped 2 or 3 steps away from her. He hummed and laughed. Now you should know that things are not the same as before. I gave you this body. Although some things can't be digested like mortals, you still have to eat. And because I used real materials for your body, even if you absorb everything you eat, you still have to eat the same amount as ordinary people. Otherwise, you will be as hungry as mortals, so hungry that you will be dormant when mortals die. Now you are tired of walking. It has been less than 4 hours. Do you know how tired people are at this time? It is not uncommon for people from the village to the big city to walk for 2 or 3 days. You have to chop firewood, make a fire and wash yourself. Many small things will drive you crazy. Let me ask you again. Red Lady finally spoke again. I used to live in the city of Wei for a period of time. I know all about it. Li Yunshin frowned and took a deep breath. You don't know. Do you think mortals only have to eat and drink? Where are they? Mortals will stink if they don't take a bath. How many people do you expect to take a bath every day in the current hygienic conditions? They also need to poop and pee. They use bamboo to scrape. They are all rich people. You're going to sleep with that kind of... He gasped, gritted his teeth and said fiercely. Together? Well, I will go now. If I talk to you one more time, I will change my surname. Red Lady looked at him angrily. After he said these, she suddenly smiled. Then you build a house for me here. Li Yunxin was stunned. Ah! I want a bamboo house. He blinked and immediately said. How big? Red Lady tilted her head and looked at the bamboo forest behind her. She thought for a while. There must be grass in front of the house. There must be 3 stones and a bamboo fence. There must be a porch in front of the house. The inside of the house must be as big as the main hall of Ziwei Palace. There must be a small stream behind the house. There are beautiful pebbles in the water. It must flow into Dongting. Li Yunxin coughed. He rubbed his face. That's easy, that's easy. It's just a matter of waving my hand. Are you hungry? Red Lady smiled and said softly. I want you to build it. I don't want you to build it with magical power. Chapter 8:14. Li Yunxin was stunned. You mean, you want me to dig the foundation, cut the wood, tie the rope and build it one by one? Yes. He thought for a while. Well, alas. Red Lady was about to stand up with the help of the bluestone. Okay. Li Yunxin sighed. It's all about making things happen. Wait a minute. I'll get you something to eat first. Wait for me here. After saying this, he ran into the bamboo forest like a gust of wind without waiting for her to speak again. Then he used his mind, and a supreme doppelganger appeared in the city of Little Wei dozens of miles away. It was almost dawn, and it was the time when people slept the most. He appeared in front of the hut where Pheasant lived, walked through the door and walked into the hut. He saw that Chicken Spirit was not asleep, but sitting upright on the chair talking. He was talking to the 2 cats on the ground. When he was talking about, although we can't understand the supreme benevolence for the time being. He saw a white shadow by the door. He hurriedly stood up. Master. Li Yunxin glanced at the 2 cats on the ground. He could see that their minds were gradually awakening. After all, they were reincarnated, so it was inevitable that they would progress faster. Then he looked at Pheasant. Let me ask you, is there a wood spirit nearby? The unruly kind that does many evil things? The so-called wood spirit referred to the spirit of plants, and there were very few of them. Even demons didn't see them very often. Pheasant was stunned. After thinking for a while he said, I haven't mentioned it. Oh, I heard that there is one near Mount Chilian, but I haven't heard that it does evil things. Master knows that wood spirits are very docile. Some are even more docile than humans. Did something happen? Li Yunxin stared at him. Is there any evil thing? What about the ugly and scary one? Chicken Spirit realized that there might be wood spirits causing trouble, but he was even more confused. Master, why do you ask this? Li Yunxin sighed. He had planned to find 1 or 2 evil wood spirits to kill. After that kind of monster was killed, its real body could be used as a building material, although few people would be so wasteful. This was because the bodies of the plant demons had absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and had long been tempered to become incomparably solid. It would be a good material for building a house. She stabbed it hard into the ground. With the passage of time, the roots would gradually grow. They were more useful than any foundation, more solid than any pillar. The people of this era were not as fastidious as those of his time. Many poor families simply piled their houses on the ground with earth and stones. But he knew that this kind of thing was not very sturdy, and would collapse in a strong wind or a small tremor. How could the house he built be this kind of thing? But the problem was that among the many skills that a transmigrator should have, including but not limited to copying poems, copying lyrics, burning glass, making gunpowder, and so on, there were very few skills in building a house. The structure of the bamboo house looked quite simple, but to make it sturdy and comfortable at the same time, it wasn't something he could do with the things he knew now. He could only ask, Are there any craftsmen in town? The Chicken Spirit clapped his hands and said, Master, what are you going to build? Well, as soon as the sun rises, I will give the order to call. Li Yunxin stared at him and said, Don't say anything about this. Now go and find the most beautiful craftsman here, the kind that can build a bamboo house. Now. The Chicken Spirit didn't know what he was going to do. Fortunately, once Li Yunqing gave the order, he would act immediately. So he replied, "Yes, master." He looked around, picked up a cat and rushed out of the door. Li Yunqing walked to a chair and sat down looking around. He could see everything in the house at a glance. He got up and scratched the wall, accidentally breaking the rope on the bamboo curtain that the chicken spirit used to cover the wall. The bamboo curtain fell down with a crash. He hurriedly used a magical power to lift it up again and snorted, "Tofu dregs." At this moment, someone knocked on the door. "Master, I found him. Let him in." Li Yunqing coughed and said, "Stay away from him." After a while, it seemed that the chicken was saying something to that person. The door was pushed open. After a while, it seemed that the chicken was saying something to that person. The door was pushed open. It was an old man, and he couldn't tell his age. He might be in his 50s or 70s. As soon as he entered the door and saw Li Yunqing's eyes, he hurriedly lowered his head and trembled, wanting to kneel down. Li Yunqing raised his hand and closed the door. Then he cast 3 inhibition spells and said, "You may rise. I ask you, have you ever built a bamboo house?" The old man opened his mouth. "Then tell me how you built it. Tell me in detail, don't miss anything." The old man opened his mouth again, but still didn't say anything. Instead, he began to gesture with his hands and squeezed out some sounds from his throat. Li Yunqing stared at him and shouted, "Chicken." The chicken spirit immediately answered outside the door, "Yes, master. You found me a fucking mute." "Master, he is a mute, but not born mute. Some time ago, he was so tired during the construction of the city that he became mute. But he is indeed the best craftsman in the city. Master cured him. You are the kindest person in the world." Li Yunqing scolded him and cast another inhibition spell. But in the end he sighed, condensed a ball of light on his fingertip, and flicked it into the old man's body. The old man's body immediately exuded a liveliness. His white hair instantly turned black, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to be straightened. His fallen teeth came out again. He turned into a strong man in his 30s. For Li Yunqing, it was a matter of a snap of the fingers. But for mortals it was a miracle. The man was even more speechless. He looked at himself first, then at Li Yunqing. Then he looked at himself, touched his face, hands, and looked at Li Yunqing again. He wanted to cry. "God, if you dare to cry, I will make you look like before." Li Yunqing stared at him. "Tell me, what do you want to do?" After saying this, he waved his hand, and a small figure appeared on the ground. It was only the size of a thumb. Then, there were many bamboo poles as thin as toothpicks piled up on the side. The old man didn't dare to cry after hearing his words, but his hands were still trembling with excitement and surprise. After a while he said with the same trembling voice, "Yes, yes. Immortal. Sect master. I will tell you now." Then, he really began to speak. At first, his voice was out of tune, as if he was crying. But his emotions gradually calmed down, and his speech became fluent. Moreover, he discovered something else that shocked him. As he spoke, the small figure on the ground moved. Building a house was the same as any other industry in this era. It was passed down by a master and an apprentice. In addition to many common methods, there were also many skills that were unique to the sect. Even to an accomplished craftsman, it would take him a great deal of time and effort to understand it. But that small figure, no matter what he said, it was almost done as he spoke. There was no mistake at all, as if it was him. But he knew that the immortal sect master in front of him was controlling the small figure, because when Li Yunqing moved his finger, the small figure also moved. Was this sect master a bricklayer in the past? In this way it was easier to speak. In the end, there were many things that he didn't even need to explain in detail. At this time, Li Yunqing said, "Skip. Next lesson." In just a quarter of an hour, the man poured out everything he had learned in his life. Everything he had learned about building a bamboo house. Li Yunqing closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then, he opened his eyes and said to him seriously, "I am here to test you. I told you to go to the star realm, to build a house for the celestial emperor after you died. Now it seems that your skills are good, and you can take up the position after death. Seal this matter. Once it is revealed, the good fortune will be gone. Do you understand?" The man hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly. Yes, yes, yes. But he asked again, what about the castellan, the king? Li Yunxin stared at him. Don't say it. The man shrank his head. Yes, yes. After he was sent out of the house by Li Yunxin, Shanji came in. He found that Li Yunxin had disappeared. A bamboo curtain on the wall had become a bamboo board. When the incarnation returned to the deity with the newly learned skills, Li Yunxin also walked in the bamboo forest for a quarter of an hour. He said he was going to get something to eat, but he didn't see any wild animals. So he turned around and walked out of the bamboo forest. He found Red Lady asleep on the bluestone. The sky was getting brighter, and today should be a good day. The sun slowly appeared behind the distant mountains, radiating light and heat like a real sun. Li Yunxin touched his sleeves and took out a cloak. He didn't even remember where he got it. When he first got the so-called temporary imperial residence of the demons, he felt it was very strange. Therefore, many things that he found interesting and delicious were stored in it. But he didn't need to eat or drink, nor was he afraid of cold or heat. Because he encountered all kinds of crises one after another, he slowly forgot many of them. For example, there was still half a basket of green plums in it. He explored it again and found some good wine and food from Munanju. Once taken out, it should still be steaming hot. He didn't think it was a magical power. It was made by people. So he picked up a few cold dishes. He put the cloak on her, and put the food on the other side of the bluestone. After doing this, he straightened up and looked at Red Lady. She must be tired from walking last night, and now she was in a deep sleep. Her hair hung on her face, trembling with her breath. A mortal was about to sleep. The ice-skin jade bone peach blossom dimple only made her body strong and immune to poison. But the rest was still like a mortal. Among mortals, it was an incredible existence, but compared to high-level demon cultivators, there was not much difference. Did she really like it? Li Yunxin slowly took a step back and looked at her, gradually feeling a little confused. I like it. He didn't know if this was the kind of emotion that he feared and wanted to try. He once told this female demon that the other half he wanted was an interesting soul, with all kinds of standards. But now those words were a little vague. He didn't know if it was because he had entered the supreme mental realm, or... He sighed softly and walked into the bamboo forest. He used his fingers like a knife, and with a light chop, he cut off a thick bamboo. Chapter 8:15. His palm was not as thin as a razor blade, but his pure physical strength could no longer be described with the word terrifying. The cut was neat without a single crack, and even a bit charred. Under the effect of the powerful force, the missing part had already been smashed into smoke. By daybreak, he had chopped down more than 100 thick bamboos. Then he cut the branches in the forest, cut them into different lengths according to his needs, and carried them out in 4 batches. After the 4th batch, he found that Red Lady had woken up. There were red marks on her face from her sleeping clothes, and she was eating with a cloak draped over her shoulders. She looked sleepy. She took a piece of bamboo shoot and slowly chewed on it. When she saw Li Yunxin, she asked, "How long did I sleep?" "About 2 hours." Li Yunxin put the bamboo on the ground and walked away to measure the land. The terrain here was flat, so there was no need to level the ground. He used his divine sense to explore the ground and found that there were no pits or underground rivers, so he could build a house directly. However, when he was investigating, he discovered some interesting things, and with a thought he took them in. Red Madam stared at him with rapt attention. She saw his hand grabbing the empty air, grabbing a lump of mud, big or small, and throwing it to the side. She thought for a while and asked, "What are they?" "Things you will need in the future." Li Yunxin clapped his hands. "This can't be considered building a house with divine power." Red Lady smiled. She took another bite of bamboo shoot and asked, "Do you know how to build a house?" Li Yunxin smiled modestly. "I heard someone mention it, so it shouldn't be a problem." After saying this, the ground was more or less measured. It was all fluffy grass, so there was no need to level it for the time being. Because he planned to build the house off the ground, the craftsman said it would be warm in winter and cool in summer, and it wouldn't breed mosquitoes. The newly harvested bamboo should be dried for a few days before being made into bamboo. But he felt that he would have a way to solve this kind of problem in the future, so he skipped to the next step. So he began to build the framework. It was more convenient for him to do this kind of thing than ordinary people. If he had to use a big hammer to hit it, he could just raise his hand and press it down. What needed to be cut with a saw, he only needed to pinch with 2 fingers. But there were other trifling matters which he had to do himself, and so it took him the whole morning. Fortunately, he felt like a little character in a game. As long as he didn't die, he wouldn't feel tired. If he still had patience, he could work for 3 to 4 days in a row. Red Madam gradually began to talk to him. But she must have deliberately avoided talking about the things that happened after they met, and only briefly talked about the things that she used to play in the city of Wei. Li Yunxin was busy with his work. He also felt that the wide sleeves of the robe were a hindrance to his hands and feet, so he changed it into an inner garment and rolled up the sleeves. The demoness, watching the golden rays of the sun on his face and arms, would often pause after saying a few words and stare at him for a while. Thus another afternoon passed. At first, Li Yunxin only did this to deal with her, but gradually he found joy in it, a kind of creative joy. In fact, mortals could also experience this kind of joy, but after growing up, there were too many things that covered up the joy itself. For example, he had other things in his mind, and wanted to finish them as soon as possible. Or because of physical reasons he got tired after a while, so the physical pain replaced the psychological pleasure. Or he had to worry about the rewards and evaluation after the work was done, and other things that had nothing to do with the work itself. It was not only like building houses, but also doing many other things. This was the bitterness of life. But Li Yunxin was in a favorable situation at the moment. When he first chose a site, he had a brief idea in his mind. He should find a place with good feng shui. But soon he realized what good feng shui. He was the good feng shui of this world now. He was already the Grand Elder, and there was nothing to be afraid of in the Midland. Even the King Rock had to be afraid of his power, as well as the people behind him and underground. He had to find old Lu, the 9th young master, and the sheriff. But it was not urgent. Shanji had ordered people to find him, but his power and information channels were not enough compared to Golden Rock. He still had to wait for the news, so he had no threat, and he had to stay idle for a few days. He didn't need to care about the rewards, and he didn't feel tired. The process of work became the purest creation. Building a bamboo house slowly from scratch with mortal methods was a very pleasant experience. He gradually became absorbed in it. When it was near dusk, the green grass was coated with a layer of golden light by the sun. The framework was roughly built, and the bottom layer was also formed. Li Yunxin jumped up and stamped on it, feeling that he had done a good job. So far, he didn't even use a rope. He decided to make it all into a mortise and tenon structure. Then he turned his eyes and saw Red Lady standing by the bluestone in a big cloak. She had been here for a whole day. Although the two of them had been talking, they would stop after a few sentences. In fact, she had watched him work all day. So Li Yunxin jumped down again. He looked at the sky and asked her, "Do you want to eat something hot?" Red Lady looked at him and said, "Okay." Li Yunxin took out a fire starter from his sleeve. Spring had returned to the area last night, and there were quite a number of withered branches that had fallen during the winter in the grass. They picked up those withered branches from the surroundings and lit a fire. There should be smoke, but he suppressed it. So a bonfire was lit, and it was getting dark. They sat by the bluestone by the fire and ate some hot food that Li Yunxin took out. After chatting for a while, the moon rose. Red Lady put on a big cloak and fell asleep on Li Yunxin's legs. But he didn't need to sleep. He just looked at the stars in the sky, listened to the insects in the grass, and heard the crackling of the bonfire. The world was silent. 3 days passed quickly, and the bamboo house had taken shape. But they didn't talk much. Red Lady often looked at his figure when he was working for a long time. She only responded gently when he asked. Li Yunxin made a small stream behind the house. He put his feet deep in the grass and ran all the way to Dongting. The river was formed. He found a water hole a few miles away and brought water up with supernatural powers. A small hill was moved and a few large stones were piled on top of it, so that the sweet water flowed down the hill and into the river. He walked slowly along the gradually clear river. He held a rock as big as a house in his left hand, and dug a small piece from the rock with his right hand. He threw it into the water. When he walked to the downstream 2 miles away from the bamboo house, the rock was dug out by him. The place he passed was really covered with smooth pebbles. He also set up some gadgets in the house with the netherworld power in his body, and some simple mechanisms. For example, he made cabinets and stoves just like in his world. The netherworld power was stored in the silver box under the stove, and a simple inhibition was cast on it. When Red Madam turned the knob made of black jade, a flame was ignited in the stove, which was carved by the hand of a stone spirit. It was big or small as she wanted. Of course, he also made a refrigerator. The 2 doors carved from snow essence even saved on the power of the netherworld. As for the toiletries and water sources used in the kitchen and bathroom, they were all made of rare stones and purified water from underground. In short, he arranged this house according to the convenience he could think of in his previous life, and the strange treasures he could get in this life. There should be only one such house in the world built for mortals by the means of the Grand Elder. He didn't allow Red Lady to come in and see first. He only asked her to sit on the stone bench in the courtyard and wait. He looked around, and felt that he had thought of all the things he should think about. Then he walked out of the house. But when he was halfway down the stairs, he suddenly said, "Wait for me for a while." So he came back after half an hour and took a horse. She said she found it in the mountains, and gave it to her as a mount. She didn't know where she caught a big shiny black cat. She said it was lost in the nearby house, and she could keep it to relieve her boredom. But Red Madam could see that when she saw Li Yunqing coming, there was a lone wolf walking in the distant forest. The wolf glanced at the horse, and immediately ran away with its tail between its legs. The black cat was not afraid of the horse. The horse was afraid of it. He washed the things he dug out from the surrounding ground before he built the house. He found that they were all gold and silver wares, and they seemed to be quite old. Li Yunqing rolled them into a ball, then pinched them into pieces, and put them into a wooden box. After doing all this, the 4th day had passed. When the moon rose, Li Yunqing led Red Lady into the house. The house was filled with the fragrance of plants, and there was a warm yellow light. Even if the demoness didn't know that in Li Yunqing's world, people used ambient lights to enhance the atmosphere and style, she could still feel the ingenuity of the use of light and shadow. She looked at the house for a long time. Finally, she looked at Li Yunqing and said, "I like it very much. This is how I want it to be." Li Yunqing let out a long breath and said with a smile, "If you feel bored living here, I can move to a nearby city. The Emperor of Rome Kingdom shouldn't mind." Or, Red Lady suddenly turned around and hugged him, her face pressed against his shoulder. Li Yunqing felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body became stiff, as if he couldn't even lift his hand. "Little you or I," he whispered. "Now. Actually, you don't know." The demoness whispered in his ear. He expected to be caught unprepared and not know how to refuse. She just stuck close to him and spoke. This made Li Yunqing feel a little more comfortable. "Don't know what? Don't know yourself. You hate it when people let you down. You don't know if you feel sorry for me, or if you really feel something else. You just remade a body for me and let me live. But even if I live, I don't know. I don't know if I like you now because of my past obsession, or if I really like you. I want to leave and think about it. You feel that I let you down. So when you get angry, it's like a toy that was taken away from you, and you have to get it back." Red Lady slowly turned her face and caressed his shoulder. "After these 4 days, have you thought it through?" Li Yunqing was silent for a while. His body softened, no longer like a hard rock. He slowly looked at the house, not knowing why his mind was a little empty. Finally he whispered, "I'm also thinking." Red Lady grabbed the clothes on his back. But only for a while. She slowly pushed him away, all the way to the door. "Then think about it. After you think about it, come back to me. Or don't come back to me." The bamboo door was gently closed. Before their line of sight was blocked, Li Yunxin found that she didn't cry like before. Chapter 8:16. He stood outside the door for a while. He raised his hand, and then put it down. He turned around, and walked down the stairs slowly. The black cat was lying on the stone table, and the horse was in the stable in the north of the courtyard. Both of them looked up, and lowered their heads when they saw him. Li Yunxin stayed in the courtyard for a while and said in a low voice, "Take care of her. If you do well, it will be your blessing. If you don't do well, it will be a disaster." Then he strode out of the courtyard. It was late at night when he returned to the city of Wei. Because he walked back, his clothes were stained with night dew. He walked slowly along the street, and looked at the houses on both sides. Compared to the previous city of Wei, or the towns in his world, this place looked shabby. A few days ago, it was the Flower Goddess Festival. Many people decorated their houses with flowers made of straw. In the past few days, spring had returned, and some people had picked newly bloomed wildflowers to decorate their doors. When he first came here, he didn't have the mood to look at these things. But now he saw everything. He also saw the uneven streets, and the filth on both sides of the street. He sighed and said, "Pheasant." After a dozen breaths, the chicken spirit ran out from the corner. The sound of footsteps echoed in the alley. A few people opened their windows, looked out, and then closed them again. When Li Yunxin entered the city, no one was alarmed. But when he preached, many demons in the city came. The preaching was not allowed to be spread, but the preaching itself was not something that could not be said. So in these few days, people knew that the hierarch and president was in the city. If he was a real person, many people would probably want to find him and see if they could see his face. But the person represented by the name, Li Yunxin, was like a god in the hearts of most people and demons in the city of Wei. The most common reaction of mortals to his arrival in the city was that after their children did something wrong or said something disrespectful, they would say in fear and trepidation in their hearts, "Master Li, please don't blame me. Please don't blame me. Children are not sensible. Children are not sensible." It was as if he had become the embodiment of heaven and earth, and became a god. No one would have guessed that on such a chilly spring night, he had been rejected, and was strolling on the street. When the chicken spirit saw his current appearance, he knew that something had happened. However, he also knew that if his master wanted to say something, he would say it. It was best for him not to say anything. She moved forward and walked beside him. After walking for a while, when they reached the end of the street, Li Yunxin finally stopped and said, "I haven't asked you these past few days. When I came here, I heard there were white-collar workers. Where did they come from? Is it enough for now?" The pheasant exhaled a mouthful of white gas. "I killed a few small demon monarchs earlier, and plundered some. But most of it was bought in Ji, and in the south with gold and silver taken from their lair. There were many demons in the city, so transporting the goods was not troublesome. But these days the outside world has been peaceful, so it wouldn't be good for us to raid their houses. Indeed, we don't have enough." Master asked at the right time. Li Yunxin was stunned. "Huh." Shanji was also stunned. "Master asked me this. Isn't he going to give me money?" Li Yunxin shook his head. He didn't know whether he smiled bitterly or angrily, but there was a smile in the end. "You wish. I want to ask you if the food in the city is enough to expand and renovate the city." The pheasant blinked. "This how to renovate? Expand it a little more?" Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed to the street. "The road should be flat. The road surface should be paved with bricks. There should be underground canals on both sides of the road, for drainage in rainy days, and sewage in normal days. What are these piled up on the side of the road?" The pheasant looked to the side of the road. There was some domestic garbage and excrement, but he didn't feel much about it. Even when the city of Wei was prosperous, there were only a few roads that were solid and clean on both sides. In the alleys, it was almost the same. There was night incense in normal days, but not every family was willing to pay for it. But according to what Li Yunxin said, he wanted to make every road in the city like this, and the roadsides should be clean. He knew that the master liked cleanliness, but he didn't expect it to be so clean. But he just nodded. "Yes, I understand. The master wants the city to be clean, and no filth can be seen. Li Yunxin nodded and said, "It will cost a lot of money, right?" The pheasant was relieved in his heart. He said hurriedly, "If we need manpower, we need food. The demons in the city can be used, but it's not enough. We need people. These people haven't settled down in the city for a long time. Many of them are sick and weak, and they have just eaten for a few days. If we ask them to do so many things, I'm afraid they will make trouble." Li Yunxin turned to look at him. "Are you afraid they will make trouble? Are you still keeping them for free?" The pheasant was stunned again. After thinking for a long time about the meaning of Li Yunxin's words, he said, Mrs. Sanhua taught us that the master said we shouldn't harm people's lives. I thought. So you have to be nice to them, and not let them suffer. Do you think I want to do that?" Li Yunxin smiled. "There is nothing in the world that doesn't suffer. I'm the one who suffers." The last sentence was said very softly like a murmur. The pheasant didn't hear it clearly and asked, "What did the master say?" But Li Yunxin said with a straight face, "You can't go on like this. You have to find something for them to do. Otherwise, they will make trouble when they are full. Also, you have to let them make a living in the future, so that they can do their own work. You want to build a city, not a refugee camp." He thought for a while, reached out and grabbed a broken bowl from the ground. It should be something used by the residents of the city of Wei in the past. Maybe it was pressed deeply when the city was burned, so it wasn't broken or burned. "Take this bowl. Take as much as you want from it." Li Yunxin handed the bowl to him. "When you take money, say Master Li 3 times. The gold and silver in the bowl didn't come from somewhere else. It came from the city of Wei. No one knew how much gold and silver had been burned and buried in the ground. But with the wealth of the city of Wei in the past, it shouldn't be a problem to build another city exactly the same. If it weren't for the fact that the city of Wei was destroyed by the Xianmen, the surrounding people all felt that this was an ominous place that was punished by heaven, and the war broke out later. This place would have been occupied by treasure hunters in a few days. But when Pheasant took the bowl, he realized one thing. His master was unhappy again. In just a few days, he was very unhappy for the second time. So he started to say funny things to amuse him. Compared with the previous days, he was much calmer tonight, and his face was much more serious. When he looked at the streets in the city, he seemed to be thinking about something, as if his mind was not here. So he asked carefully, "Master, do you have any other orders?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while, and said, "Build the city of Wei into an interesting, beautiful and clean city. It's spring now, it's time to plant the land. I think the southwest is good. You can ask people to cultivate the land in the southwest. Go there yourself tomorrow, and keep walking in that direction. You will probably see a bamboo house. Don't go there, think about it yourself. How far to cultivate the land from there? The people inside can see people coming and going from a distance, but they won't disturb the peace near the bamboo house. And tell those people that unless the owner inside comes to talk to them, they are not allowed to go there. Deal with some dirty things when cultivating the land." Pheasant thought for a while, and said seriously, "Got it. But the dirty things you mean, are they the Yin spirits and the souls of the dead nearby? I'll deal with them tonight." Li Yunxin glanced at him. "I mean shit and urine." Pheasant said, "Oh." He scratched his head, and looked at Li Yunxin's face and said hesitantly, "Master, do you want to do something else? Something else? For example, get some smart peddlers who are not annoying." He blinked. "Female peddlers. I'll carry some fresh toys on my shoulders, as well as some oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, needles and thread, or the 4 treasures of the study. I'll go there every few days to sell my goods." Li Yunxin thought for a while. "Okay." Pheasant rubbed his hands happily. "Master, but, the golden house." Li Yunxin glanced at him. "It's Li Xinyu." Pheasant was stunned. "Ah. If it's her, don't worry. She's immortal now." Pheasant was stunned again. After a while he said, "Well, then we can ask her to live in the city. I can also." "She thinks the city is boring." Li Yunxin looked at the street. "I also think it's dirty. It's not that you didn't do a good job. Only a few people in the world can do this. But you need to improve." Pheasant agreed. Then he thought for a while and said, Master, I have news. Someone said he saw you Meng in the city of Wei. Li Yunxin's face changed. Why did you say it now? You were not in a good mood just now. Pheasant whispered. It's not good news, but it's not urgent. It's like this. The informant from Rongjun said he saw a man with a maid, a patient, and a black cat in the chaos. At that time, he had escaped with the refugees and disappeared without a trace. It was in the area of the former Lai Kingdom. It happened a month ago, and I just got the news. Li Yunxin frowned and thought for a while. No supernatural power? I don't think so. Pheasant said. The person over there is smart. If there is, he will report it. I've already asked him to look for it. The chief didn't transform into a human, but showed his original form. Li Yunxin shook his head. It's not good news. Well, do your job well. I'm leaving. Master, are you going to look for them? Yes. After saying this, Li Yunxin's figure had already disappeared. Pheasant sighed and saw a piece of paper floating down from the sky. He hurriedly took it and found it was folded. It was a small paper man cut out. With a thought, he felt the majestic demonic power in it. It was a magic weapon. He had no doubt that if he unfolded it, these paper men would jump to the ground and become tireless laborers who could be used to repair the city of Wei. Chapter 8:17. The news came a bit strangely. When he entered the former Lai Kingdom, this thought suddenly emerged in Li Yunxin's mind. It was not the news itself, but the timing. When he was a little depressed because of Red Lady's matter, an informant happened to send him the information he obtained more than a month ago. This timing seemed to be a bit perfect. If someone really did it on purpose, it couldn't be the pheasant. It should be the informant's problem, intentionally or unintentionally. But these were all trivial matters. Li Yunxin thought it was most likely the Rock King's doing. But if this method was used to lure him here, it meant that things had not developed to the worst. It seemed that there was still room for discussion. With this thought in mind, he walked for a while and entered Shuanghu City. It was said that Yu Meng and the others were later kidnapped by refugees and entered this city. Then the Rong army sealed the city and began to investigate the hidden remnants of the previous dynasty. The matter ended a few days ago, and the city gate was reopened. Li Yunxin thought he would see a dilapidated scene after entering the city, but what he saw was a bustling scene. There were indeed Rong soldiers patrolling the streets, but the shops on both sides of the street were open. Many civilians walked back and forth, and even beggars and hawkers could be seen. All the restaurants, tea houses, and all kinds of shops that were open were decorated with lanterns and streamers. Those who did not know the situation would think that they were celebrating a festival. He thought that the Rong army wanted to use this method to calm the people's hearts as soon as possible, so that people could see that once the towns under Emperor Rong's rule were assimilated, they would quickly regain their prosperity. But there were 1 or 2 black bloodstains that had not been washed off by the streets, which seemed to remind people that this kind of prosperity did not come easily. He walked a dozen steps along the street and looked around casually. He wondered where Yu Meng would be if he was still in this city. If someone deliberately lured him here, what did they intend to do in this prosperous city? Soon he found some clues. Someone was staring at him. The gaze lingered on him for more than 3 seconds or 6 times. He immediately turned his face and found that the person who was observing him was standing at a street corner. He looked like an idler. He was a middle-aged man with short clothes and an ordinary appearance. When he saw Li Yunxin's gaze turn to him, he did not avoid it. Instead, he smiled at him and took the initiative to walk over. This person was interesting. Li Yunxin probed his aura and discovered that he was neither a fiendish demon nor a cultivator. Instead, he was an ordinary person. The man took more than 10 steps to stand in front of him and bowed. "Greetings, Dragon King." Li Yunxin thought about it. Are they from Southernwood Lodge or the Freemasons? Freemasonry. The newcomer smiled. Dragon King's discerning eyes are like torches. So now you're siding with the Golden Rock. The man laughed again. Dragon King guessed wrong on this point. I'm Dragon King's man. Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows. Oh, which Dragon King? Now in this world besides you, Who else is worthy of the 2 words Dragon King? The newcomer said solemnly. We are indeed Dragon King's people. And we will temporarily listen to the orders of the person in charge. The person in charge also has a very close relationship with Dragon King. Li Yunxin sighed. Don't be deliberately mystifying. Tell me who is the person in charge. Dragon King, please look up. The man raised his hand. The person in charge is waiting for you upstairs. Li Yunxin turned his head and looked in the direction he was pointing. They were standing in front of a restaurant called Hongtai Restaurant. It was a 3-story restaurant with octagonal flying eaves. Currently, there was a man sitting by the railing on the 3rd floor. Seeing his gaze, the man nodded and smiled. Li Yunxin's eyes were slightly cold. He lowered his head in silence for a while, then turned and entered the door. Walking up the wooden stairs to the 3rd floor, he found that the entire floor had been booked. The hall was empty except for a man sitting at a table by the window. There were a few dishes and a half-empty bottle of wine on the table. It seemed that the man had been waiting for some time. He looked at the man at the top of the stairs for a while, then slowly walked over. His expression was cold and his voice solemn. Li Chunfeng, now you've become a member of the Freemasonry? Li Chunfeng reached out and grabbed another bottle of wine from the air. He took out a cup and placed it in front of Li Yunxin. He turned to Li Yunxin and said with a smile, Yes, they're my people. Not only them, but the painting Dao created by Lu Gongzan is also my people now. I still revere your name. Anyway, both of them are abandoned pieces. They're still useful in my hands. Sit down, we can talk about it slowly. Li Yunxin walked to the table. His gaze swept over the dishes and wine, and he said coldly, Oh, I forgot. You've always been good at recycling trash. Like me and Sheng Guanyu. Li Chunfeng stopped smiling. He shook his head and sighed. Your hatred for me is very justified. But your mother, Sheng Guanyu, was also a pitiful person. In the past, many things were not easy to say before the time was right. Now that the time is right, sit down. I'll tell you everything. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. I've more or less understood what you wanted to say. There's no need to repeat it a second time. What you understand is only part of it. Li Chunfeng looked at him with a strange light in his eyes. If one were to disregard all prejudices and emotions, it would be the light of gazing at a precious jade that one had painstakingly carved. Now I'll tell you another part. It's about my origins. This part, you'll be the first person in the world to know. Li Yunxin frowned. After thinking for 2 breaths, he finally looked at him. Do you want to tell me that you're also from a world with airplanes, cannons, and even interstellar warships? No. Li Chunfeng looked at him. It's more complicated than that. Fine. I'll listen to you. Li Yunxin exhaled softly and sat down opposite him. He took out a pot of mu nanchun and a cup from his sleeve. He pushed the cup that Li Chunfeng had prepared for him aside, poured a cup of wine, and drank it. After drinking 2 more cups, he said in a low voice, Go ahead. The man opposite him pushed the wine cup in front of him aside as well. He thought for a moment and said, You've always thought that Xie Sheng is the person we want, but you're not. You're wrong about that. Xie Sheng is the person they're looking for. But the person I want isn't him, it's you. To me, Xie Sheng is the abandoned pawn. I've been very clear about this since the moment you were born. It's still the same even now. I've been observing you for more than 10 years. They thought I was observing you for them, but I was only observing you for myself. I told them that your temperament was unstable, and they didn't know if you were the person they wanted, or if you'd run down from the astral plane. So they needed more time to slowly observe you. Half of what I said was true, and the other half was false. Li Yunxin looked up at him. Which is true, and which is false? It's true that your temperament is unstable, because I've slowly come to know that you don't have the emotions of ordinary people. The rest of what I said was just to buy time. Li Yunxin smiled. Are you trying to tell me that you knew I was heartless from the moment I was born? I'm curious how you could tell. Because I was originally the same as you. Li Chunfeng looked at him seriously. You acted very well. Ordinary people can't see it. But that's what I used to be. I can see it. So what you're going to tell me next is that it's a big coincidence that a person who was originally as heartless as me came to this world. and that a heartless person like me happened to be born many years later. And then you know all my thoughts. Everything you do next is for my own good? Li Yunqing curled his lips and shook his head. If there are too many coincidences in one thing, then it should be made up. Li Chunfeng was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "How do you know I was originally a person?" "It doesn't matter," Li Yunqing sneered. "It's the same if you're a spirit. So are you a spirit reincarnation?" "Not really." Li Chunfeng slowly raised his hand and made a stroke in the air. Then a spindle-shaped object appeared in the air. Inside this spindle, there were countless fluorescent lights dancing. Every one of them was extremely small, like a speck of dust. "This is a big universe." Hearing this word coming out of his mouth, Li Yunqing wasn't surprised. If his explanation of his identity was one of the few truths he had ever told. Li Chunfeng pointed at the speck of dust. "This is a small universe. For example, this small universe of this world, and the small universe of the world you came from. There are many such universes, just like these specks of dust. They move and collide in the big universe without any pattern. This is what happened to the collision of this world." He paused as he said this. But Li Yunqing didn't ask anything. He just poured himself another glass of wine. Then he continued, "Both sides mean nothingness. One side is nothingness because of absolute order. There is no randomness, no movement. So even the Big Bang doesn't happen, and nothing exists. The other side is nothingness because of absolute chaos. Because of absolute chaos, all rules are invalid, and there is nothing. The part in the middle, the part where you can see many small universes dancing, is the habitable zone between these two extremes. There is order, but there is also chaos. Chaos and randomness cause the universe to be born and evolve. But the order ensures that there are certain rules to follow, and it won't collapse. In the words of your world or this world, the laws of physics are macroscopically orderly, but on the microscopic level, such as the quantum level, it is also disorderly. Of course, this is still an inappropriate metaphor. So this kind of place is called a habitable zone." When Li Chunfeng said this, he was a bit like Shenmu, but his expression and tone were gentler than Shenmu's. The way he looked at Li Yunqing reminded the latter of the past. Once when he was young, when he taught him the art of painting, he was patient and gentle, ready to stop at any time, because of a question, and explain with even more patience. At that time, they were in their own courtyard. There were still some mottled shadows on the ground. Li Yunqing took a deep breath, and turned his face away. So, there is no clear dividing line between the world of absolute order, the world of absolute chaos, and the habitable zone. It's gradual, Li Chunfeng said softly. Those closer to the side of order may be more law-abiding. If there is a nearby universe, perhaps there are only strict rules, and very little randomness. We can't infer what that kind of world looks like. As for those closer to the side of chaos, it is a universe that is more chaotic than our world, or even the world you came from. In there are more rules that you can't understand. You already know such a world. It is the universe that is colliding with the universe we are in. In there, perhaps the so-called living things do not have a fixed form. Everything exists in the form of energy. But because it has not become too chaotic, it can still exist. In the past, this universe, and the universe you came from, were considered to be worlds with relative rules in the habitable zone. There are many such universes, many such universes. And there are also many relatively chaotic worlds. But the so-called habitable zone of these two worlds is only a very small part of the entire universe. You can even say that it is negligible. The diagram I made is just to make it easier for you to understand. Li Chunfeng said slowly. Do you understand now? Li Yunqing let out a sigh. Don't ask me in that tone. I am not that kid now. And I have never been. Li Chunfeng smiled tolerantly. Then you understand. You have always been smart. So another thing is not difficult to understand. Like all worlds, the orderly will eventually develop into the disorderly. For example, the collapse of a house, the shattering of a wine glass. This is a process of entropy increase. The big universe also follows this process. In the beginning, perhaps the whole big universe was absolutely orderly. Also, nothing existed at all. But then chaos appeared. And there was a relatively orderly world. Then there was a world in the habitable zone. And then there was a relatively chaotic world. And finally, there was an absolutely chaotic world. This can be seen as a gradual process of erosion. And it is also in this erosion that a habitable world is born. But the habitable world also becomes chaotic and uninhabitable because of the erosion, and eventually leads to another kind of destruction. For example, in the beginning the world was a ball of ice. Then there was a fire burning outside. It was too cold inside and too hot outside. Only the small part where the ice and fire came into contact with each other was just right. But the ball of ice would also get smaller and smaller, and eventually, the whole big universe would become an absolutely chaotic world, and nothing would exist. Li Yunqin frowned. You don't have to be so long-winded. This law also exists in our so-called small universe. Starting from the Big Bang, the density of matter became thin, and then stars and planets were born. Then the universe expanded, and everything became too thin, and finally, everything was destroyed. He sighed and looked at Li Chunfeng. I am not a native of this world. Can you get to the point? Li Chunfeng smiled. Okay. The point is, I come from a world that was destroyed like this one. Li Yunqin was stunned. You. I said there are many such worlds. Collisions happen all the time. Just like human history, the history of your world, and the history of this world before. The period of peaceful development is short, and the time of war is the majority. In a small universe, the probability of not being hit is actually very small. Hundreds of millions of years, billions of years, tens of billions of years, are all very short. Most of the worlds are colliding, so don't think that this universe is unlucky. It is just a normal occurrence. Chapter 8:18. Li Chuanfeng's expression turned serious. My world is very lucky. It took more than 60 billion years for it to collide with the chaotic world. But at that time, we could already adapt to the chaos. So many people escaped. Li Yunqin's hand paused on the wine glass. He turned to stare at Li Chunfeng and frowned. You mean, you came from another world apart from this world and my world? It's not unusual, Li Chunfeng said in a low voice. Li Chunfeng said in a deep voice. Countless universes collide and intertwine, creating something like a wormhole. When a world gradually becomes chaotic, it will also gradually become riddled with holes. So transmigrators appear. It's very normal. He paused and looked at Li Yunqin. Transmigration is not a strict term. It should be called falling. From a more orderly world, falling into a more chaotic world. A person's falling is a long process, like the horizon of a black hole. You should know about the horizon. Many of the emotions in her heart were temporarily blocked by the fact that Li Chunfeng might have come from another world. Li Yunqin said slowly, You mean, for example, a person falling into a black hole. At that moment, he has already been torn apart and pulled in. But the light particles reflected from his body also escape outside the black hole. When they escape to the edge, they can't go any further because of the gravitational force of the black hole. That can be seen as a stop. So an observer outside the black hole can still see that person. Feel that he is still alive, still existing, but falling infinitely slower. But what he sees is just an image. You mean this kind of thing? Li Chunfeng smiled approvingly. He nodded. Yes. Of course, this is just a metaphor. The black hole itself is not connected to any unknown place. But there may be a space-time black hole between two universes that are relatively close. Such a thing is a passage between two universes. You came from your world. The principle is similar. Li Yunqin realized something. This made his expression change. You mean, in my original world, I still exist? Yes. Li Chunfeng nodded. Right now you exist here and there. As I said, the fall is a very slow process. It might last for hundreds of millions of years. You have lived here for more than 10 years. In the other world, it might only be a few days. This kind of thing might not only happen to you in your world. Perhaps many people are falling. But because human history is too short, no one has been able to observe the entire process. Li Yunqin's fingers trembled slightly. He drank 1 glass of wine, then 2 more. Then he raised his head and looked at Li Chunfeng seriously, as if he had never seen him before. In other words, you weren't a human before. Not any kind of being that we can understand. You came from your world to this place. Li Chunfeng nodded slowly. Yes, but I have fled here with a plan. Or rather, I am a savior. The drop was a drop from a relatively orderly world to an even more chaotic world. I, on the other hand, did the opposite. We used unimaginable resources and only sent a few dozen people. We are the saviors. Li Yunxin stared at him in a daze for a while, but there was no cold smile on his face like before. Then he slowly leaned against the back of the chair and sighed. If this is true, why didn't you say it earlier? Just because I have an unstable mind. You know, it's hard for humans to understand the feelings of plants. Li Chunfeng was silent for a while before he shook his head. But the difference between me and you in the past is not something that can be measured by humans and plants. It took me a long time to adapt to this world, to adapt to being a human. That's why I said that I can see what kind of person you were in the past. But even if it was the you of the past, it was a time for me to adapt extremely successfully. I have a way to save this world. He looked at Li Yunxin. But I need someone to cooperate with me. Not someone from this world, but someone from another world. That's why I've been waiting. Not for Xiesheng, but for someone like you. I've even observed Chen Zhao before. But back then, you didn't care about this world. And saving this world requires you to pay a huge price. I have to know if you're suitable. Or rather, I have to ask you to be suitable. You went from being emotionless to having feelings. From not caring about anything to now having someone you can risk your life for. It's all part of my plan. My gaze has never been on Xiesheng, but on you. I saw you shed your first tear for me, and Shangguan you in the city of Wei. I also knew that you risked your life to kill the ancestor for Lu Gongzan and the others. So now, I know that you're ready. Li Yunxin's fingertip tapped on the rim of the cup. Outside the window, there was a hubbub of voices full of vitality. This made the conversation between the two seem unreal, as if they were talking in a dream. But Li Yunxin knew that what they were talking about was the naked, terrifying truth of this world. The vast world was just a tiny speck of dust in a corner of a tiny particle of the universe. And the two of them were the specks of dust in this dust. After a while he said in a low voice, "What do I need to sacrifice?" "It could be everything you have right now," Li Chunfeng said slowly, "this real world." Li Yunxin took a deep breath. "You mean to put the whole world into the painting scroll? You subdued the Freemasonry and Taoist dancing to prepare for this. Taoist dancing can draw the earth chi for me. The Freemasonry knows mechanical drawing, so they can ensure the accuracy of the Taoist's brush. Plus the preparation I've been making, it's almost complete." Li Chunfeng took out a scroll from his sleeve and slowly pushed it to Li Yunxin. "You're now a Grand Supreme, so you can help me finish the last stroke. You can understand the painting path created by Shenmu as using a new law to shrink the projection of this real world into another dimension. Then, I'll use the method I used to ask you to bring this world in the painting back to your world. The projection is just an example. For example, the you in this world right now is just a projection of you in that world. So, this place can temporarily escape the disaster. But the price you have to pay is that once you go back, your so-called Grand Supreme Power can only be fully effective in this world in the painting. When you go back to your own world, your power will be greatly weakened because you lack the support of the law. Only you can do this. Neither Chen Zhao nor Xiesheng can do it. Li Yunxin thought for a while and looked at him. Is this the so-called great sacrifice? You know I don't care about these things. These powers. To me they're just byproducts in the process of survival. Li Chunfeng smiled. It's the current you who doesn't care. If it was you in the past, which would you choose between saving the world or experiencing new laws and discovering interesting things? I think you'd choose the latter. Even if you die with the world, you wouldn't care as long as you're happy. Li Yunxin suddenly stared at him. Is Lu Gongzan someone you arranged? Li Chunfeng thought for a moment and smiled. No. So Li Yunxin didn't ask further. He just looked away again. After listening to the voices outside the window for a while, he said, "You should tell me the truth. Now, I can tell myself to think that the so-called relationship between father and son isn't important. In this grand background of destruction, you and I are just two travelers who met by chance. If you look at it from this perspective, I can forgive many of the things you've done to me. You have your plan, and it's not evil or bad. You used me, so something happened. Just like in my plans, Lu Gongzan was often used as a tool, but he doesn't care. We're not father and son." Li Yunqin shook his head. "It doesn't matter about family. We're the same kind of people. The current me can understand the things I did in the past, so I can understand you. But since we're the same kind of people, please don't hide anything from me." He smiled. It was the first time he smiled at Li Chunfeng, and said, "What other sacrifices are there?" Li Chunfeng sighed and said, "Fine. There is indeed another thing." As he said this, he dipped his fingertip into the wine, and dripped 2 drops on the table. They were so close to each other that they were almost touching, but there was still some distance between them, so they were still 2 separate drops of wine. "You fell from your world to this place, which means that your world has begun the process of being eroded by chaos. But this process will be very long. It should have just begun. I also said that you fell here because of a black hole in space and time. Then this black hole is actually like a pipe. Or rather, you in this world and you in that world form a pipe. It connects the 2 worlds. When you cultivate and come into contact with the chaotic laws here to become stronger, you're constantly storing water in this pipe. When the water reaches a certain level, it begins to flow into your world. So your body is filled with power and becomes extremely strong. Because it can almost be seen that the powerful force of this chaotic world has begun to erode your world through you." He looked at Li Yunqin. "So you become a Grand Supreme. Grand Supreme has nothing to do with the state of mind. It's just an inevitable process for a transmigrator like you. There are a few other Grand Supremes in this world who use similar methods. Chen Zhao became a Grand Supreme. Golden Rock became a Grand Supreme, and the people from the Xianmen became Grand Supreme. It's the same logic, but they didn't build a passage between the 2 universes. Instead, they built a passage between this small world and the chaotic world outside. This small cycle also gives them great power, but it will also speed up the destruction of this world. It's like drinking poison to quench thirst. If you bring this small world back to the other side, it means something like this." Li Chunfeng raised his hand and swiped between the 2 drops of wine on the table. The 2 drops immediately fused into one, becoming a complete drop. The 2 worlds will have closer contact, and the erosion will become stronger, speeding up the destruction of your world. This process is extremely slow for humans, but for the entire small universe, it might be billions or even tens of billions of years earlier. This is another price. Li Yunqin stared at the drop of water and said in a low voice, "It allows this place to struggle at death's door, but it speeds up the destruction of my world." "Yes." He was silent for 2 breaths before he laughed and shook his head. "If the trend of the entire universe is to keep colliding and pushing chaos toward order, then everything will be destroyed in the end. Compared to this trend, and compared to human civilization, and the lifespan of the universe, billions or tens of billions of years are nothing. Maybe before the early end happens, human civilization would have been destroyed more than 10 billion years ago. Why do you think I care about this?" Li Yunqin raised his eyebrows. "Or maybe this is immoral in your previous world." Li Chunfeng heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Yes. It's immoral. For example, the people here think it's immoral to torture and kill cute animals, even if they belong to different races. In my world, the previous civilization ensures that the next civilization has enough time and resources. It's a recognized moral principle. But what we're about to do goes against this moral principle. This is because I've realized that this kind of morality is useless. Staying in a universe for a long time will only lead to destruction. Only constantly escaping to a more habitable world is the right thing to do. This is also the difference between me and the others." Li Yunqin smiled. "This is indeed the you I know. Li Chunfeng also smiled. It's also the you I know. The two looked at each other for a while. Li Yunxin slowly turned his face away. Fine. In other words, after taking care of the things on the surface, we have to do this. Yes. But I hope you'll be the one to convince them. Li Chunfeng looked at him. And to do this, we have to wait for some time, not immediately. How long do we have to wait? Li Chunfeng shook his head. It depends on the timing. Maybe a few years, maybe a decade, or even a few decades. Li Yunxin sighed. Yes. Well, for people like you who look at the whole universe. Sometime, a few years, a decade, or a few decades. Fine. Then where are you Meng and the others now? Also, other than waiting for some time, are there any small things to do? Li Chunfeng smiled. He looked at him carefully, and there was a rare look in his eyes. There are indeed some small things. Shen Mu wants to get his wife back from the astral plane. For this, we have to kill the golden rock, and use his body to summon that woman. Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows. Then how do we kill him and keep his body, and make sure that he doesn't destroy the world? Li Chunfeng raised his hand. Then I'll introduce you to an old friend. Chapter 819. Grandpa D, please show yourself. A man came out from behind the wooden screen in the northwest corner of the hall. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He was indeed an old acquaintance of Li Yunxin. Grandpa D walked over slowly, and stared at Li Yunxin as he walked. He stopped 3 steps away from them and sneered. Li Yunxin, you didn't expect to see me here again, did you? Your treachery on the sea is not over. But Li Yunxin just looked at him expressionlessly. Li Chunfeng didn't say anything, and just stared at him. Grandpa D glared at him, and his chest rose, and fell a little faster. After another 2 breaths he said, Good. You're really a father and son soldier. Li Chunfeng, since you're so capable, I think you can do it without me. I'll take my leave now. He turned around and left after saying that. Li Yunxin didn't ask him to stay either. He just frowned and looked at Li Chunfeng. What are you doing? Li Chunfeng sighed and smiled helplessly. You didn't give him face. You've already agreed to let go of the past and cooperate with him this time. If you just nodded and smiled at him or greeted him, he wouldn't have been so embarrassed. Didn't you see how slow he was when he walked over? After all, he was already angry. Li Yunxin sneered. Him? Li Chunfeng smiled and shook his head. Fine. Then he stopped smiling and turned to say in a deep voice, Grandpa D. Grandpa D walked to the stairs. Hearing his greeting, he stopped and turned around with a straight face. Don't be so shameless. Li Chunfeng looked at him. I said we'll talk about the inside story when my son comes. You should have heard it just now. Don't you realize that following him is the only way out? Do you want to die? When he heard the word son, Li Yunxin frowned. But when he heard what Grandpa D said next, he just opened his mouth and pouted, not saying a word. If he said those words, he would probably say something similar. Die! Grandpa D was completely infuriated. He slapped the handrail fiercely and it broke. The waiter on the second floor hurriedly poked his head out to take a look. However, when he saw this force, he quickly retracted his hand and dodged far away. You think I haven't died before? Life in the astral plane is worse than death. He lowered his voice and shouted. Who do you think I am? My father was the god of the previous world. Do you know about the king of Pantheon? But now people like you. He took a few heavy breaths and suddenly suppressed his anger. I'm talking to you because you've been kind to me before. Since that's the case, I'll just walk my own path. You can't leave. This is what I'm going to tell you next. Li Chunfeng said in a low voice. Do you think Cloud Mountain is protected and you can rush out without eating or drinking? Do you think you can bring fewer people? But there's something you're not clear about. Let me remind you, when did spiritual energy first appear? And when could it be used? Di Gongben took half a step forward but stopped again. What? Before this world, there was a previous civilization. Li Chunfeng pointed to the sky. What power did they use then? You guys used Cloud Mountain as a relay station to obtain power from the astral plane, and put it into this world. At that time, Cloud Mountain was called the Star of the North Star. The supernatural power that came from it was called magic power, and the astral plane was called the magic net. Am I right? Then that world was destroyed by Mother Earth. After Li Zhen came here, there was spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Have you ever thought about how it came about? He pointed to the ground again. The power of the Earth's core and Mother Earth of the netherworld is powerful and violent. It's not something that the living beings in this world can use. Li Zhen merged with Mother Earth and became a filter to suppress the violent power of the netherworld. Only then was the power that was filtered slowly dispersed into the world. With the spirit chi, the people in this world could make use of the chaotic laws to make use of the spirit chi. You didn't know this before, but I'll tell you now. Grandpa D was stunned. Li Yunxin was stunned too. But he wasn't stunned because of how the spiritual energy came about. He was stunned because of the person called Li Zhen. He was curious about what kind of person could do so many things. But he didn't seem to think about himself at all. What was the purpose of this person living? Grandpa D frowned. So, what exactly do you want to say? What I want to say is that although Mother Earth of the netherworld is a great calamity in the world, she is also the source of life in the world. Before your world was destroyed, weren't all of the life forms in your world born from the ancient gods that Mother Earth had created? In essence, all the living beings in that world are a part of Mother Earth. It's still the same even now. Your exalted body is naturally very strong in this world. But have you ever thought that if you really ran out with Cloud Mountain, you would be isolated from this world by the chaotic world outside? Mother Earth's power, the so-called spiritual energy, and even the laws that use the spiritual energy to condense your body are all isolated? Your exalted body is refined from spiritual energy. It's only a short time, and the spiritual energy dissipates slowly, so it's not a big deal. But if you have to walk for a distance of 70 to 80,000 light years, even for 10 or 20,000 years, can you guarantee that your body won't collapse? When that time comes, you will find that your body is gone when you run out. The Martians who left first devoured all the resources in the galaxy along the way, and found that they were facing an empty area, without even interstellar dust. Then in such an area, your field body that has been affected by the chaotic laws can't adapt to the uncorrupted world at all. Guess what will happen to you? Grandpa D was dumbfounded and speechless. Li Chunfeng let out a sigh of relief. Now come and sit down. Let's talk. Grandpa D took a few deep breaths. Finally, he walked over slowly but didn't look at Li Yunxin. He only looked at Li Chunfeng. I'm not doing this for myself. It's also for the 400. Li Chunfeng smiled and pulled out the bench between the two of them. Sit. Only then did Grandpa D sit down slowly. Li Yunxin looked at him. Bro, there's nothing to be unhappy about when we're enemies. Grandpa D turned around and stared at him for a while. His expression gradually softened. Let's talk about the past later. Li Yunxin smiled and looked at Li Chunfeng. Tell me, what should I do? Ask Golden Rock to let down his guard first. You've already done some of this. For example, let Bai Yunxin go back and talk to him about what happened on the sea. Tell him that you'll go to the netherworld eventually. Li Chunfeng reached out and tapped on the table. I've also done some other things for you. Speaking of this, he paused and looked at Li Yunxin. Calm down and listen to me. Li Yunxin was stunned and then frowned. What did you do this time? I found Long Si and Lu Jun, and I tricked him to go to Golden Rock. Li Chunfeng pressed his hand down. Don't be impatient. I have my reasons for doing this. Li Yunxin stared at him without saying a word. Grandpa D seemed to be happy to see the situation between the two. He seized the time and sneered. Hey, you two have the same style of doing things. Li Yunxin, didn't you also use Lu Gongzan to help you in Yunshan? Like father, like son, like son, like father. I finally understand where you learned your ruthlessness. You. Li Yunxin raised a finger. Grandpa D suddenly closed his mouth and bit the tip of his tongue. It should have been broken, but Gran Shang's body was so strong that it didn't fall off. He only widened his eyes in pain and could only make muffled sounds. His body couldn't move at all, and beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. He rolled his eyes and looked at Li Chunfeng, but Li Chunfeng ignored him and only looked at Li Yunxin. He said slowly, First, in a few days, Lu Jun will devour the ninth young master. I told him to join Golden Rock. Golden Rock will use the two people in his body to threaten you, so he won't do it. I'll protect the ninth young master's life first. Second, I have people around Golden Rock. You don't have to think too much. They are not Bai Yunxin or the evil spirit. They are just two demon kings. But I can also give some advice, so that Golden Rock won't harm the lives of Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master. With these two insurance, what you are worried about will not happen. Li Yunxin heaved a long sigh and looked at him gloomily. Third, you can actually ask Lu Jun to come to me. Li Chunfeng shook his head. Then it will be hard for Golden Rock. Maybe you will have a fierce battle with him. Compared to their lives, I care more about yours. So, Golden Rock thinks that with these two people in his hands, and what Bai Yunxin said to him, he won't think that you are in danger. Li Chunfeng said in a low voice. Next, do one more thing. Bai Yunxin will arrive at Shuanghu City soon. She loves you, and you don't dislike her. You can ask Golden Rock to marry her to you. In Golden Rock's eyes, he will think that you are showing weakness because you are afraid of him. With this relationship of marriage, he will really think that you are going to go overseas. Then you can tell him to look at the sky and lead him to the sky. He will then realize that he has never had such a thought. As Lord Peng, once he realizes this, he will be more shocked than ordinary people like us. At this moment, the restriction you and I set up will take effect and Yunshan will launch a fatal attack. Then everything will be done. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Bai Yunxin can't do this. Li Chunfeng was stunned. Huh. You can use tricks to determine who is better. This kind of trick makes me uncomfortable. Li Yunxin sneered. Saying that you want to marry her, and then kill her father? This kind of thing is despicable and different from flirting. Li Chunfeng raised his eyebrows and slowly leaned back in the chair. He exhaled softly. Then he looked at Grandpa D, who was sweating profusely, and smiled. Fine. Then don't worry about her. But you, have you really chosen Li Xianyu? Does this have anything to do with your great cause of saving the world? Li Yunxin said stiffly. I'm just asking. Li Chunfeng smiled. I used to think that if there is, then this is my private matter. We can sit down and talk, because we are talking about business. Li Yunxin looked calm. But he was not smiling like before. After Li Chunfeng said that he would use Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master as hostages. Fine. Li Chunfeng sighed softly. He looked as if he had just seen Grandpa D. What's wrong? Help him. I still have something to say to him. Li Yunxin moved his fingers. Grandpa D grunted and was about to stand up. But Li Chunfeng raised his hand slightly and pressed him down again. Bro, a real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. You don't have any divine power right now, and I'm only in the profound realm. If he wants to play tricks on you, I can't do anything about it. Let's talk business. Do you know how to make Cloud Mountain give a fatal blow? Ever since he showed up, Grandpa D was like a balloon. He was so angry that he swelled up, but he was grabbed by someone else. His anger subsided a little, but he was immediately filled up. Now he was full, but he had no choice but to glare at Li Chunfeng and say through clenched teeth. Back then, when I went to Cloud Mountain, you said that the flesh was magical. What did I do to you? Li Chunfeng patted his shoulder thoughtfully and looked at Li Yunxin. Grandpa D, don't talk so much. The Celestial, whose face was red with anger, took 2 deep breaths and then 2 more. Magic paper, Xiesheng is spicy, Xiesheng is spicy. Li Yunxin looked at them. So you still want Xiesheng? He knows how to activate Cloud Mountain's weapon system? Don't Chen Zhao and Li Jin know? Li Chunfeng shook his head. Everyone has their own specialties. You can think of Chen Zhao as an analyst and Xiesheng as a mechanic. Cloud Mountain doesn't have a weapon system, but we can build one temporarily. Using it once is enough to deal with the Golden Rock. Yes. Li Yunxin sneered. Then this mechanic is really powerful. I've tortured him for decades, but he still hides something from me. Now I'm suddenly interested. I want to torture him slowly and see when I can squeeze out all his words. Li Chunfeng smiled. It's not too late to try after you've used it. Indeed, we can't let him live. It seems that you formed an irreconcilable grudge with him. Grandpa D glared at them. He really wanted to say that the father and son were really a crooked beam. But the sharp pain at the tip of his tongue stopped him from speaking. He only cursed in his heart. But he already regretted letting Li Chunfeng go to Cloud Mountain a few days ago. He just wanted to see what he had to say. This was Li Yunxin's father. And the two didn't seem to be on good terms. He wanted to get some useful information from Li Chunfeng. But he didn't expect that Li Chunfeng wouldn't lose to Li Yunxin in terms of eloquence. He was soon convinced that he had found a better choice. Now he realized that meeting one of the two was already bad luck. But now he actually met two. He was really unlucky. He just wanted to end this quickly. No matter what he planned to do in the future, he had to get away from these two pests first. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly saw someone jump up from downstairs. The three of them had hidden their identities when they came here. They walked properly and spoke properly. But this person didn't seem to care about what the people on the street thought. Luckily, they were only on the 3rd floor. People who saw them would probably think that they had met a Jianghu swordsman with extraordinary kung fu. The three of them were familiar with each other. It was Bai Yunxin. She landed at the table and immediately looked at Li Yunxin. She carefully looked him up and down, as if there were many things she wanted to say in her eyes. In sharp contrast to the three people at the table, she looked happy. Then she looked at Li Chunfeng. This arrogant demon of the mysterious realm actually bowed to Li Chunfeng respectfully and said in a soft voice, "Mr. Li. Am I late?" Grandpa D felt goosebumps all over his body. Chapter 820. Li Chunfeng first glanced at Li Yunxin, who was staring at him, and then at Bai Yunxin. He smiled, stood up, and politely returned the greeting. "Miss Bai." Bai Yunxin hurriedly dodged and smiled. "Mr. Li, I can't accept your greeting." Seeing Li Yunxin's expression, Master D's face darkened. Li Chunfeng waved his hand again. "Miss Bai, please take a seat. How are you Meng and the others?" "They're all settled down." Bai Yunxin answered with a smile. "I bought a house for them in the city. The original owner was happy to entertain them. He also treated Demon Cat's injury. She's fine now." After saying this, she looked at Li Yunxin. "What are you talking about now?" Li Yunxin was about to speak, but Li Chunfeng said, "We're almost done. It's about the matter between the two of you." Yunxin said she has some ideas. Bai Yunxin was stunned and immediately said, "I don't have any ideas." Li Chunfeng smiled. "Oh, the names of the two of you. I mean Xiao'er." Li Yunxin glared at him, but he saw Li Chunfeng also winked at him. It seemed to be saying, "If you don't agree, then you talk to her." Bai Yunxin looked at the two of them, and their eyes turned into knives, spears, swords, and halberds. They talked back and forth on the table in silence. After 2 breaths, Li Yunxin stood up. "I have some ideas." He looked at Bai Yunxin. "Let's talk while we walk. Take me to see Yu Meng." After saying this, he stood up and walked away. After 2 steps, he turned around and threw a ball of green light to Li Chunfeng. "For you." It was none other than Xie Sheng's remnant soul. From the time they walked out of the restaurant to the time they walked on the crowded street, Li Yunxin didn't say anything. His face looked calm, as if he was thinking about something. Bai Yunxin could see this, so she didn't say anything. When she walked, she really looked like an ordinary girl in the human world. She was beautiful and dignified, attracting the attention of almost everyone on the road. But looking at the clothes and temperament of the people around her, he knew that these two people were either rich or noble, so they wouldn't come looking for trouble for a while. Just like that, they walked into a deserted alley. Only then did Li Yunxin stop under an old locust tree that had lost all its leaves. No matter what Li Chunfeng said to you before, what he promised you, you shouldn't trust him. Bai Yunxin was stunned. She still looked like an ordinary mortal woman. She looked up at him and asked, "Ah, didn't he tell you before that he might facilitate things between us?" Li Yunxin sighed. "There is one thing you may not know. Li Xianyu was saved by me." Bai Yunxin slowly furrowed her brows. "What does this have to do with anything?" "He wanted to use our relationship to make your foster father lower his guard." Li Yunxin looked at her and said seriously, Then he planned to get rid of him. As for marrying you and becoming in-laws, it was all a cover. I didn't want to do it, so I told you. After a few breaths, a veil seemed to be removed from Bai Yunxin's face. It was the veil that made her look gentle and peaceful, like a mortal woman. A gust of wind suddenly rose on the street, swirling and sweeping away the dust and dead leaves. Bai Yunxin slowly widened her eyes. Li Xianyu is just an obsession. Huh. She's a ghost cultivator, just an obsession. The female monster's breathing became heavy. She doesn't know what she wants at all. If she hadn't met you, she would have fallen in love with another strong, good-looking demon. She doesn't like you. You're a smart person, don't you know that? Li Yunxin sighed. Now we're talking about Li Chuanfeng's plot against your foster father. You think he doesn't know? Bai Yunxin said angrily. But he doesn't care. Chen Zhao won't let anything happen to my foster father, no matter what Li Chunfeng wants to do. Li Yunxin was taken aback. Did your foster father tell you something else? When they were trapped in Hatred's palace in Mount Manwan, they had speculated about the relationship between the Golden Rock, Shinryu, and the art saint in a room. But at that time, their knowledge was limited, and they didn't get the right answer. Even Bai Yunxin took a wrong turn. But now, from what she said, she seemed to have a clear understanding of the cause and effect between the three. He told me after he got out. Bai Yunxin stared at Li Yunxin. My father was acting with Chen Zhao. She paused and suddenly asked a seemingly irrelevant question. Do you know why he and my mother gave birth to me? Without waiting for Li Yunxin to answer, she continued. Because my mother looks like Chen Zhao. Do you understand? They had a relationship, and my father still hasn't forgotten her. So you think Chen Zhao will definitely protect your father's life? Li Yunxin frowned slightly, thinking of what Li Chunfeng had said to him before. The plans and things they had discussed today were all told by him to pass on to the underground world. Was it because of this? Chen Zhao really had feelings for the Golden Rock and Li Chunfeng knew it, so he asked him to say it himself? But according to what Taoist Qingshui said, and what happened to Shinryu, the affectionate, Chen Zhao didn't seem to be real. On the contrary, Chen Zhao seemed to be affectionate but ruthless. He let out a sigh. Why are you telling me this? Isn't that what you care about? Bai Yunxin stared into his eyes. You feel that being with me is tied to your father's scheme against my father. So you feel that this relationship is not pure, and you are being used. But now you should know that what happened between us has nothing to do with my father and your father. My father doesn't care. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and smiled. So that's how it is. But it's not because of this. His tone became calmer and gentler. You know, I'm not a person who can be easily influenced by other things and factors. The obstacle between us isn't what you're talking about. It's, when you said these words, your motive itself. What? What motive? Li Yunxin thought about it seriously and said, I know you like me, but there's something else in your love for me. You're rational. You think about yourself, the people behind you, and the situation around you. Whether it was when you left with the evil spirit at the foot of Yunshan, or when I asked you to leave on the sea. You asked me to leave. Bai Yunxin glared at him. You asked me to leave. When I was at the foot of Yunshan, I had to go back. My father was about to wake up. I also had to prevent my mother from doing anything to you. I also wanted to tell my father not to do anything to you after he woke up. Don't. But Li Xinyu won't leave. Li Yunxin interrupted her calmly. She will definitely choose to stay by my side. I know what you mean. You consider the situation, and the overall situation. You stand at a higher position and think for me. You also have a longer view. But Li Xinyu only has one obsession. She only has me in her eyes. For the sake of me, she doesn't think about the future or plans. Ask a normal person to say who is better between the two of you. Everyone will say it's you. You're much more rational than her. Since you know that But I'm not a normal person. Li Yunxin spread out his hands. Look at me. Don't you know me well enough? I'm insecure and selfish. I don't want rational love and affection. I just want a person to give to me without any purpose or intention. Only such a person can make me feel at ease. Even if that person isn't rational enough, can't do anything big, can't think far, it will still make me feel at ease. Yes, you want to say, which love and affection in the world doesn't have some rationality. I also know that the so-called liking and love should be mutual giving by two people. It's very unreasonable to ask one person to sacrifice for the other. But I'm such an unreasonable person. I used to think that I might like interesting souls. But after these things, I realized that if a person has an interesting soul, but is rational, I will be afraid of her. I will have a hard time scheming against her, understanding her and guarding against her. If one day her rationality tells her to do something else, tells her to hurt and betray me, how will I be hurt? I know myself. Li Yunxin smiled. I will definitely hurt others. Even those who love me to the point of being rational will be hurt, because of this one day. In fact, I also want to ask you, why do you like me? Li Yunxin looked at her. You saved me from the beginning. After that, I didn't do many things for you. Why do you like me? Is it because when we first met, did you feel there was a fragrance in my soul? Or is it because the only person in the world who is worthy of you, who doesn't make you feel bored, is me? If that's the case, how different is your love for me and Li Xianyu's obsession? Bai Yunxin took a step back slowly and shook her head in disbelief. I understand. Whether it's me or Li Xianyu, you've never cared about anyone. You're just like an evil ghost learning to be a human. You're pretending to like her. You don't know what you like about her, and what you like about me. I should have known. Li Yunxin thought for a while but still smiled. I see. Then you're right. Or, you can think like this. I'm an evil ghost. I'm learning to be a human. I've never loved anyone before, so I don't know what love feels like. So, I want to give it a try. What I want is the taste of it, not the person. So, it's best not to call someone I'm afraid of. I can try and have a taste. Even if one day I fail and want to leave, I won't worry about the person resenting me because of her rationality. She will probably still treat me well. Bai Yunxin sneered. Shameless. Li Yunxin said calmly. I've never denied my shamelessness. And what if I succeed? He looked at Bai Yunxin. So if you know what I'm thinking, do you still dare to be with me? The banshee frowned and thought for a while. Li Yunxin smiled again. Li Xianyu won't think about it. Now do you understand? Bai Yunxin's aura slowly receded. The chilly wind at the corner of the street also gradually disappeared. She took 2 steps back, and her voice was no longer angry. It doesn't matter whether I understand or not. Maybe you're right, I have to be rational. For example, I want to ask you now. Li Chunfeng wanted to harm my father. Since you planned to refuse me, you should have known that I would hate you because of this. Why did you tell me? That's not how you do things. Li Yunxin thought for a moment and let out a long sigh. My style. I don't even know what my style is. If you think that I'm good at scheming and think that's my style, it means that you don't know me very well. In fact, what I like the most is not hiding in the dark and shooting, but fighting with my bare arms. But in the past, I could easily be killed by others if I did that, so I had to use some less exciting methods. But now, I'm already the supreme. The only one who can be my opponent on the land is probably your father. Do you think I'll want to test my strength? You mean you're challenging my father to a duel? Bai Yunxin's voice became calmer and calmer. She controlled her anger very well. Chen Zhao did not know if she suppressed it, or if it had really disappeared. It's not that I have to fight, if he's willing to give up his body, because Li Chunfeng thinks that what he wants is related to the survival of the world, and Chen Zhao's. If he really has feelings for Chen Zhao, he might give up himself for Chen Zhao. He won't make it difficult for her to choose between keeping him or killing him. Bai Yunxin sneered. She was no longer as infatuated as before. Then aren't you worried about Lu Gongzan and Zhouer's safety? You'll take good care of them, Li Yunxin said. Hami. Bai Yunxin laughed mockingly. Now do you know how Yu Meng and the others got their house? No one would be willing to give up their house, especially one that young master Yu feels comfortable with. I'm guessing you killed everyone in the room. The dead won't object. Li Yunxin shook his head. What are you trying to say? You kill without batting an eye. But I know you're a good girl. If you hate me, you won't take it out on old Lu and Jiu'er. Bai Yunqing was so angry that she laughed. How can you be so sure? Because your mate has been with you for a long time. Li Yunqing sighed. When you were lonely, you chased after Jiu'er and said that you wanted to eat him, but you didn't really eat him. You went up to Cloud Mountain a few times to ask for the feather robe, but the cultivators from Xianmen didn't really kill you or imprison you. Not only because your father is the Rock King, but also because you didn't go overboard. You don't treat mortals as people because you don't think they're the same kind. But it's different for demons. A woman who kills a goose with a smile might be a kind girl. Bai Yunqing was silent for a while. Suddenly, 2 drops of tears fell. Li Yunqing, I hate you, she said. Then she turned into a gust of demonic wind, lifting the roofs of the houses on the side of the street, and soaring into the sky. Li Yunqing raised her hand to rub her face, and stepped into the alley. Chapter 821. The demon ran away angrily, and didn't say where Yu Meng was. But when Li Yunqing was on the street, he saw a big house in the northwest of the city. The restaurant was 3 stories high, and was one of the tallest buildings in the city. But there was a 4-story turret in the northwest. It looked extraordinary from afar. Based on the direction he was walking in, he deduced that it was where Yu Meng was. He passed through the streets and alleys and realized that he was right. It wasn't a temple but a private house. It looked majestic, and the street in front of the house was clean and quiet. This should be the rich district of Shuanghu City. He walked through the wall without hesitation, because the size of this house was very similar to the original house of the Yu family in Weiqing City. The high walls almost took up an entire street. If he knocked on the door and waited for someone to open the door, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Besides, the original people in the house were all killed by Bai Yunqing, so there shouldn't be any news. But when he really stepped into the house, the first person he saw was a person. Many people, male servants and maids, carrying all kinds of fruits and snacks, hurried back and forth on the garden path. They didn't say a word. It seemed that the owner of the house had ordered them not to disturb the peace. He could tell at a glance that these were indeed people, not demons or ghosts. Looking further into the distance, next to a pool of water, there was a reclining chair on the newly sprouted grass. A person was lying on the chair, covered with a brocade quilt. He seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. There were 2 pretty maids beside him. One was massaging his shoulders and legs, and the other was directing the servants to place the food. His voice was also very low. Li Yunqing could understand this behavior. It was a chilly spring, and the house had to be heated. Therefore it was not easy to breathe. So he ran out, and enjoyed the fresh air of early spring while drinking hot tea under the quilt. It was similar to turning the air conditioner to 16 degrees, and then covering himself with a quilt in the summer in his world. But didn't he kill them all? He frowned and walked over to Yu Meng's side. The girl massaging his shoulders and legs was Lily, and the one directing the servants was Wuxia. Back in Changji town, the one who was killed by golden light with a single sword strike was the former. But now, he looked no different from an ordinary person, as if he had used some kind of method to recuperate. As soon as he appeared, the 2 girls jumped in fright. The servants, on the other hand, were very careful when they approached their master. They lowered their heads, and did not dare to casually look at him. So they did not see how Li Yunqing had arrived. But both of them didn't have a bad impression of Li Yunqing. They also knew that he had supernatural powers. After a moment of shock, they regained their senses and called out in unison, "Priestly!" Li Yunqing smiled. "I'm not a Taoist priest. I am a demon. You might as well call me Young Master Li." The 2 sweetly called out again, "Young Master Li." The servants at the side looked at each other, unsure if the demon this person was talking about was real or not. Things were different now than they were in the past. Demons do exist, this kind of thing. Everybody in the world already knew. At this moment Wuxia ordered, "All of you are dismissed. Tell your master that my young master is meeting an important guest, and will not see any other guests for the time being." The servants hurriedly complied and quickly retreated. Yu Meng then looked up at Li Yunxin, but he was still lying on the chair. I heard that you have been doing well recently, and are already an extraordinary person. Li Yunxin smiled. It's just your previous realm. Wuxia, have you recovered? Rock King helped. Yu Meng said. You can say that. Wuxia's face became gloomy. Li Yunxin glanced at her, then looked at Yu Meng. Only then did he notice that under the blanket on the chair, there was an empty leg, and on the other side of the chair, there was a wooden fake leg. He bent down and pressed. He found that Yu Meng's left leg was broken, but the wound had already healed. At this moment he heard Lily say, Young Master Li, please persuade my young master. Li Yunxin understood what was going on. On the night he helped Red Madam reconstruct her body, he had thought of this method, using his own flesh and blood to do this. This involved some difficult to explain principles. There should be an answer, but because of the attitude of the Taoist sects in this world, if you know how, then don't bother to know why. It became a muddle. Using flesh and blood to reconstruct the body was easier, and less likely to go wrong than using ordinary methods. Moreover, the reconstructed body was more like a human, if the practitioner's level of cultivation was not high. As for the method he used, it was naturally more brilliant than the ordinary method. But the problem was, although he had been immersed in painting for many years, and should be more familiar with the construction of the body than Golden Rock, Lord Rock had lived longer than him. There was no reason to use Yu Meng's flesh and blood to reconstruct Wuxia's body. Li Yunxin frowned. What happened? Yu Meng raised his hand. At that time, you were entangled and couldn't get away. I wanted to find someone else to help. After thinking about it, only Golden Rock could do it. So I went to find him. Bai Yunxin did me a favor and spoke up for me. So he used my flesh and blood to reconstruct his body. He said this lightly, but Li Yunxin knew that the process was extremely difficult. At that time, he really couldn't help Yu Meng. He was only in the mysterious realm. He sighed. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about why you used this method. Why do you have to do this? You're not the Grand Elder now. It's not difficult to ask him to get you a leg. Yu Meng smiled. Since you're the Grand Elder now, you should be able to see more. For example, karma and karma. Wuxia lost her life because of me. I should pay her back. Wuxia raised his sleeve and wiped the corner of his eyes. Li Yunxin sighed. I understand. You should pay her back. But why do you have to limp? She'll be sad to see you like this every day. People who don't know you might think you want to use this to sell her favor. We've always remembered young master's kindness, we can't forget it. Young master doesn't mean that. Lily said. Yu Meng smiled. Young Master Li doesn't mean that either. Go get me a heater. Let's talk. And call the sheriff. Wuxia and Lily hesitated for a while, then slowly walked away. Then they turned around and said, Young Master Li, you have to persuade my young master. Li Yunxin nodded. After they walked some distance away, Yu Meng said seriously, I don't want to owe Golden Rock a favor. What do you mean? You should know what kind of opportunity the Golden Rock had to become a Grand Supreme. It's because of the Heavenly Heart Law. I used to be the leader of the Celestial Sect. Now I'm asking him for a favor. It's a bit far-fetched to explain this in the secular world, but you should be able to understand. Li Yunxin thought for a while. I understand. Ask him to help you, but use your flesh and blood. Don't use his things. We don't owe each other anything. But you didn't want Golden Rock's help. Now I can help you. Yu Meng smiled lazily. It's also because I know there will be a battle between you and Golden Rock. All the more I don't owe him a favor. Speaking of which, do you know how I got here? Li Yunxin was slightly stunned. Not owing him a favor, because he and Golden Rock were bound to fight. Coming from Yu Meng's mouth, these words should be true. He was a little absent-minded, even though it was only for a short while. In his list of people closest to him, Yu Meng's name was not included. But now, he actually saw himself as a friend. He didn't know what caused this. Or rather, after he searched through their past experiences and interactions, he didn't feel that he had ever provided any benefits for him. No, it had nothing to do with benefits. Li Yunxin sighed in his heart. Maybe seeing someone pleasing to the eye, and treating him as a friend for no reason. This kind of Jianghu legend was true. It was just that he was still unable to truly comprehend this feeling at the moment. He hoped that one day he would understand. There seemed to be too many things he couldn't understand, so he smiled and skipped this thought. Did Bai Yunqing bring you here? She brought me here. Yu Meng nodded slightly and picked a grape from the small table next to him. He didn't know where he got this grape from in this season. I was worried that she would kill someone. I know her temper. She never sees people as her own kind. Coincidentally, I also know the owner of this house. He used to be friends with my family. He did business. It wasn't as big as my family, but it wasn't small either. Now my family is gone, but my connections and channels are still there. Maybe because of this, he treated us quite well. So I told Bai Yunqing not to hurt him. The demoness actually agreed immediately. She said that since you don't like her killing people, let him go. Yu Meng pinched the grape and thought for a while. He retracted his hand into the quilt and looked at Li Yunqing. When she said that, her expression and tone were unusual. I guess she fell in love with you. I also know that you two used to have a lot of connections. So I don't know, what are you going to do to Rock King? It's just her wishful thinking. Li Yunqing sighed. I told her everything before I came here. As for Rock King, it's not about what I want to do to him. It's about me needing someone to protect me. I don't want another uncontrollable powerful being to appear in the Midland. Based on these 2 points, he has to die. Yu Meng thought for a while and suddenly said, Li Chunfeng told me to persuade you to do as he said. From the looks of it, do you have another way? Li Yunqing wasn't surprised at all. His father was actually very similar to him. He would never let go of any possibility. He must have met Yu Meng before he came to Shuanghu City. He thought that Yu Meng's persuasion might have some effect, even if it was only a little. So he told Yu Meng his plan. Li Chunfeng might have a lot of detestable aspects in other areas, but he was definitely a cautious person. So Li Yunqing smiled and didn't hide it from him. From a rational point of view, his plan is brilliant, but it's too despicable. Yu Meng twitched the corner of his mouth. Li Yunqing spread her hands. What? Pretending to marry someone's daughter, and then killing her father. Then you might have to imprison or seal the daughter. Can you accept this? Yu Meng said, yes. So what are you going to do? I'll fight with him. Li Yunqing said seriously. Before I came here, it was just an idea. But after hearing your evaluation of him, I think my plan can be implemented. If I lose, I'll find another way. If he loses, he'll give me his body, and I'll protect his soul. The current situation isn't good for him. I guess he won't dare to go back on his word. A mysterious smile appeared on Yu Meng's face again. Li Yunqing frowned. What are you smiling at? I understand. Yu Meng said with a smile. You have another plan. Right now it's just a cover-up. Speaking of this, I'm really curious. How are you going to plot against the real Grand Supreme Master? After all, your cards are on the table. I'm serious. Li Yunqing said seriously. I want to fight to my heart's content. Let's have a decisive battle on the top of the Forbidden City. Let's have a showdown between masters. It's also a wish. Yu Meng just smiled. The most interesting thing is that even I know this is not your style. Jin Peng and Bai Yunqing should know better. You put out this cover, and they will see through it at a glance. Then they will wonder why you said and did this. So you plan to use this method to disturb Jin Peng's mind, forcing him to be cautious and not dare to harm Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master? Then ask him to invest a lot of energy and attention in the easy-to-think of things. And then you attack him unexpectedly like before? Li Yunqing sighed and did not speak. Yu Meng smiled. Okay, I won't guess. He pointed to his broken leg again. The reason why I didn't make a new one for myself is that I don't want to get involved in these things anymore. And I don't want to deal with any supernatural powers. I just want to be an ordinary person in this life. A rich and happy ordinary person. So what's the big deal about losing a leg? After all, I have someone to take care of me. Li Yunqing looked at him. Are you serious? The two little girls will not have an easy time. I'm looking for a house. Yu Meng said, Shuanghu City is not bad. I plan to live here. When the house arrives, I will marry the two of them and make them my second wives. Li Yunxin shook his head. You Xianmen sages are really interesting. You just want to be immortal and don't want to care about the world. As for the other two, they want to cultivate their feelings again. In the end, you are all running away from the past, and we have to clean up the mess for you. Yu Meng smiled. I helped you take care of the cat demon, and you do one more thing for me. Then I can really draw a line between you and me. You don't have to worry about the world calamity. Being a free rich man is much more interesting than being a Xianmen sage. Li Yunxin nodded. What's the matter? Tell me. Make me rich for a lifetime. It's not troublesome, just a few decades. I want to be rich. Li Yunxin thought for a while. Making you rich and not asking you to cause trouble. It's much more difficult than asking you to cultivate for a long time. Okay, I'll promise you this. As he said this, he saw a black shadow rushing over from afar. The voice sounded like it was crying. Your Majesty. Chapter 822. Before he could react, he was hugged by the cat spirit. The cat spirit rubbed against Li Yunxin's chest, chin, and neck as soon as she was in his arms. Luckily, her hair was tied up in a bun. Otherwise, the jewelry she wore would have been rubbed into gold and silver foil. But it wasn't a cat. It was a living, beautiful woman. Just like a pheasant used to get up early, a cat still had the habit of being coquettish. Her delicate body wriggled in Li Yunxin's arms. Those who did not know her real body might think she was a snake spirit. Li Yunxin was confused by her enthusiasm. In the past, the cat spirit liked to wink at him occasionally. She was the boldest and the most lively one among the four monsters. But now, because they had been separated for so long, she was much bolder than before. He just stroked her hair and said softly, Okay. Yu Meng looked at them and coughed. Okay, you guys take your time to catch up. I won't disturb you. After saying this, she lifted the quilt, took out her fake leg and skillfully put it back on. Then she stood up and walked out of the garden. She could move freely. She didn't look like she was disabled at all. Li Yunxin remembered that she used to be a top master in the secular world. It seemed that there was no need to make another leg. Maybe she could make an iron leg in the future and float on the water. After Yu Meng left, the cat spirit left him. She looked up at him and blinked. Suddenly the sweetness faded away. My king, did you see Bai Yunxin? Li Yunxin was surprised. Huh? The cat spirit looked back. I was worried about him. Then she pulled Li Yunxin's hand and put her body on his arm. But I was really happy to see you. Li Yunxin smiled. You little vixen, you also know how to put on an act. What's wrong? Why are you worried about him? He was chatting happily with Golden Rock in the Mocking Heavens Palace. The cat demon blinked. The Mocking Heavens Palace, Great King, is where the Golden Rock lives. I stayed there for a few days, and the Golden Rock wanted to adopt me as his daughter, but I ignored him. Li Yunxin was stunned. You've been in contact with Golden Rock? Does he like you? That's exactly what I wanted to tell the king. I think you'll definitely need it. The cat demon squinted happily. Yu Meng brought us to the Heaven Mocking Palace. I thought it was a good opportunity to take a closer look. If the Great King were to fight with the Golden Rock in the future, it would be good to know what kind of person he is. Li Yunxin rubbed her head. Thank you. The cat demon laughed even more happily after being praised. Your Majesty, you must not know that the Golden Rock is an old pervert. Li Yunxin was intrigued. What do you mean? These words had indeed piqued his interest. He had been surprised when he found out that Bai Yunxin's mother was the evil spirit. But now that he thought about it, it did not seem to be unacceptable. Although the evil spirit was born by Shinryu and the Golden Rock, it was not the kind of birth in the human world. Instead, the evil spirit was split from the spirit. Moreover, it was a demon, so it was normal that it did not care about human ethics. Therefore, it was not strange that the Golden Rock adopted the evil spirit and gave birth to Bai Yunxin. After all, there were many things in the human world that were more abnormal than this. But later on, He always announced that Bai Yunqin was his adopted daughter. Maybe it was because he still had some scruples about human relations. But before this on the street, Bai Yunqin told him that the golden rock adopted the evil spirit because it looked like Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao created Shinryu for himself, so it was normal that she looked like him. Shinryu and the golden rock then created the evil spirit, so it was normal that the evil spirit looked like Shinryu. For Chen Zhao's plan to kill Shinryu, the golden rock was willing to cooperate with her, and sealed himself for 1,000 years. If such a sacrifice could be explained by the fact that he loved Chen Zhao, it would make sense. But Li Yunqin frowned. What kind of person was Chen Zhao? He read the translucent jade scroll, and felt that this person was quite normal. He had great love, and could not stand injustice. According to his impression from the world he came from, this kind of person was probably a righteous and decent person. He did not want to criticize other people's private lives. After all, he often played with people's hearts and emotions. But the problem was that he only played with people's hearts and emotions. This art saint seemed to have gone a little overboard. To make the golden rock, who had seen the world, so loyal to him, Li Yunqin could not imagine how deep the relationship between the two was. After all, there was also the Lord Dongting, who knew whether the one he loved was Shinryu or Chen Zhao. There was also the Taoist Qingshui. Oh, there was also Shen Mu. For the first time, he felt that the view of love of the spaceship civilization's astronauts was indeed a little strange. Seeing that he was interested in this matter, the cat demon was even happier. When she spoke, she was very lively as if she was telling a story. My king, do you know that Bai Yunqin is not the Golden Rock's adopted daughter, but his biological daughter? She was born from the evil spirit who was pregnant with Baizhen. My God, the evil spirit is also the Golden Rock's daughter. He actually had a daughter with his daughter. Hearing this, Li Yunqin looked around. The snacks and fruits that Yu Meng had placed here when he was relaxing were still there. He walked 2 steps, and sat on the chair that Yu Meng had been lying on. He grabbed a handful of sunflower seeds and said, Bai Yunqin said that it was because the golden rock loved the art saint, and the evil spirit looked like the art saint. That's why they loved each other. The cat demon did not spend as much time with Li Yunqin as the pheasant. Therefore, she was not as familiar with Li Yunqin as the chicken demon. Ru Jian saw that Li Yunqin was listening to her for a long time, so she was very happy. She casually swept away all the food that she did not like from the small square table, and sat down as well. Her beautiful golden eyes widened, and her pupils shrank into a line. My king, you don't know. How is this the reason? I stayed in the Temple of Mockery for more than 10 days. The golden rock liked me, so he allowed me to move around freely. I heard him tell the 3 female demons that I looked like Chen Zhao, and then he did that thing. She pointed at herself and said, he also said that my nose looked like Chen Zhao's. He nagged me about a lot of things, but I was too lazy to care about him. Then he said that he wanted to adopt me as his daughter, but I was too lazy to care about him. Li Yunqin ate 2 melon seeds and thought for a while. What kind of person is the golden rock? Not as beautiful as my king. The cat demon also thought for a while. He said that he was an old man, but he was not very old. He said that he was a young man, but he was a little older. Looking at his appearance, I can't tell how old he looked. But anyway, oh, if I had to say, I would say that he was an uncle. Li Yunqin nodded slightly. What about his personality? He was an old pervert. He always talked with a smile, but it was not the kind of smile that other demons had. It looked like he was really smiling. He also wouldn't kill people while smiling. When he really wanted to kill someone, he would put on a straight face and say that the person had done something wrong. The cat demon frowned. But he was not an easygoing person either. I stayed for more than 10 days, and I saw him kill 3 people. 2 of them seemed to be incompetent, and I don't know why the last one was. He looked like a person. Li Yunqin nodded again. What did he say to you? About Chen Zhao? When Yu Meng brought the cat demon to the heaven-mocking palace where the golden rock lived, he should have just arrived at the sea. Shi's mysterious realm did not have much of an advantage, but according to the cat demon, the golden rock was very nice to her. This could not be explained by Yu Meng's saying that he owed the fruit of fate. There must be a reason for this. It was not because he was afraid of the cat demon's master, but because of something else. He said that he and the art saint were so congenial and in love with each other. He also said that the art saint had gone underground for some reason, so he was left to guard the world above, so that nothing would happen to the world. When he said that, he looked like he was about to cry, as if he was sincere. But my king, don't be fooled by him. He always acts like this when he says this to everyone. He also said that when he saw me, he thought of Qining. He also said that it was not because I looked like him that he wanted to be a substitute, but because of this, the two of them were fated. It could be considered a memorial for that dead relationship. The cat demon shrunk her neck as she spoke. It's so disgusting. I ran away quickly. Li Yunxin pinched a seed and peeled it slowly. A thought came to him. Bai Yunxin said that the golden rock was not worried about being killed, because he felt that Chen Zhao would protect him. He also felt that the golden rock was willing to do so many things for Chen Zhao, because they had a close relationship in the past. The cat demon also said that the golden rock was an old pervert, who could not forget Chen Zhao. He also really had a child with the evil lord who looked like Chen Zhao. He should be able to tell from this information that the Rock King was indeed deeply in love with Chen Zhao. Then, why did that old thing tease the cat demon like he was playing? Because he was Chen Zhao's new favorite, and worked for them above ground, so he felt neglected and abandoned. That's why, this kind of deduction made sense for ordinary people, but it didn't make sense for the Golden Rock. Chen Zhao was a smart person. The Golden Rock, who could work with a smart person like him, and was told the inside story, should also be a smart person. Now the smart Golden Rock was facing a challenge. There was another Grand Supreme on Midland who could shake his position. In his opinion, this person had also gained Chen Zhao's favor, and had the intention to replace him. If Li Yunxin was the Golden Rock, he would have to worry about his own life. Chen Zhao even killed the Shinryu, not to mention the Golden Rock. Moreover, she had been underground for many years without any news. She might change her mind again. He would not be like the Golden Rock, who felt that Chen Zhao will definitely protect my life. He should try to contact Chen Zhao again, and find out what was going on. At the same time, he would prove to Chen Zhao that he was more useful than that person. But this was not easy to achieve. Li Yunxin could stand out mainly because of his background. This kind of halo was something the Golden Rock could not learn. If this did not work, then he might as well be more thorough. He would kill all those who walked on the land and worked for the underground. Chen Zhao had no one to use, so he had to rely on him. At least the Golden Rock, who did not know more about the inside story, should think so. Then, whether it was his various behaviors or the information he had revealed to him through Bai Yunxin, they were all to make him feel that, because of Chen Zhao, he did not want to shed all pretense of cordiality with him. The new nobleman? Previously, he had sent the Lord of the Night and the Lord of the Clouds to the city of Wei to make him know that he was unwilling. Then, he used these things to make Chen Zhao lower his guard and cover up his killing intent. When Li Yunxin thought of this, he sighed in his heart. He was busy saving the world, but he had to think about these things and play house with the Golden Rock. What a small world. As for Chen Zhao, he did not seem to be as smart as he thought. He had first created a Shinryu, but in the end, he could not get rid of her. He could only rely on the Golden Rock to solve the problem. Now he had left the Grand Supreme Golden Rock, which was also a problem. Seeing that he did not say anything, the cat demon thought that he was listening attentively. Then, he excitedly talked about the layout and decoration of the Heaven-Mocking Palace and so on. Then, he talked about the interesting things he had seen, but he did not know if he added details. Finally, he said, "So I thought that the Golden Rock was very polite to Yu Meng. Maybe the two of them were scheming something. I pretended that I was not feeling well, and could only tell you when I saw the king." "King, Bai Yunxin said that she wanted to marry you. I was afraid that she wanted to harm you." Li Yunxin only smiled. "You don't have to worry about her. There is no possibility." But in his heart, he was thinking, If the golden rock really had the idea of killing all the people on the ground and forcing Chen Zhao to respect him again, what would he do? Chapter 823. He felt it was time to talk to Qining. At this moment, the cat demon rolled his eyes and played with the teacup on the table next to him with one finger. He played with the teacup on the table and spun it, then dropped it on the ground and broke it. Then he said, "My king Yu, I saved Li Xinyu. She lives outside the city of Wei now. You can go back to the city of Wei to find Shanji. Sanhua is also there." Li Yunxin said, "Shuanghu City may not be safe. You can go back to help Shanji if you leave earlier. Even if you don't like to work, it's good to have some fun." The cat demon sighed with disappointment. He fiddled with several things on the table and said, "My king, you are different from before." Li Yunxin smiled. "For the better or for the worse?" The cat demon stared at him carefully for a while. "More like a human." "I used to be a human. That's a good thing." Li Yunxin was silent for a while. She seemed to have thought of something before saying, "Let's go. I have to get down to business. If it goes well, I will see you in a month." After saying this, he disappeared from the courtyard. The next moment, he reappeared in the restaurant where he talked with Li Chunfeng. He had left for less than an hour, but it was still empty when he came back. Master Di was not there. Only Li Chunfeng was sitting by the window with a cup of wine in his hand. He was not surprised to see him reappear in the hall. He just sighed. "I guess you told Bai Yunxin what we are going to do." Li Yunxin walked to the window and put his hands on the railing. He looked at the street and said, "I didn't agree to it from the beginning. It's not what I am going to do. I told you everything." "To what extent?" "I told you that you wanted me to marry her, just to make Golden Rock lower his guard, so that you could kill him. Bai Yunxin has already left. She should have brought the message." Li Chunfeng drank up the wine in his cup, shook his head and poured himself another cup. "You should know that it will be a big variable. If you fight against him, no matter who wins or loses, all living beings in the Midland will suffer, all for your pleasure. Is this appropriate? That's why I want to talk to Qining. Listen to what she says. You should know how to contact her." Li Chunfeng was silent for a moment, then drank 3 more cups. Li Yunxin turned to look at him, and found that his face was slightly red. From this, one could tell that he must have dispersed his supernatural power, and experienced the state of being drunk or tipsy, like a normal person. He would occasionally do such things himself. "When you were born, I already knew that you weren't an ordinary person." Li Chunfeng suddenly said something irrelevant. "Most of the time, you try to restrain your overly mature actions and thoughts. But there are also many times when you do show interest in this world like a newborn child. The longer I observe you, the more curious I am about what kind of person you were in the past. But even though I know you have a past, I often really treat you as a child. Many of the things I've said and done to you before weren't just an act. A lot of them were genuine. Now think about it. You should realize that apart from teaching you some cultivation methods, I didn't try to interfere with or guide your thoughts," Li Chunfeng said in a low voice. "First, it's because you're not a real child, and your mind isn't a blank piece of paper. I taught you how to think, but it's hard for you to accept it. Even if you accept it, there are still some other things hidden in your heart, which makes it even harder for me to know what you're thinking. Also, it's because I like your character. You're thoughtful and organized. You're the kind of person I want." Li Yunxin didn't interrupt him, but just listened quietly. When Li Chunfeng said this, he asked calmly, "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because this time, after you came back to the Midland, you did different things. You helped Li Xinyu and Shanji settle down. Then you looked at Yu Meng and that little cat spirit. Didn't you realize it? You're like a parent now. You're trying your best to think about the children." Li Chunfeng reached out his hand and touched the wine pot, as if he was considering whether he should drink another cup. But in the end, he pushed the pot away a little bit, and only put his hand on the table. "I wanted to do this kind of thing before. Shang Guanyu, when I met her in Cloud Mountain, my eyes lit up. She should be the noblest person in the world. She's from this world, but she's pure, kind, and beautiful. She hasn't become like those lifeless cultivators. So I brought her out. I felt that experiencing some beautiful feelings in between the things I had to do would make the world a little more interesting. It wasn't a dark, uncertain world that might really be heading towards the end of the road. After that, I went to Dingzhou with her, and I really felt like the sea and the sky. I could finally free myself from the suffocating atmosphere of the Xianmen sect. My life was quite leisurely. But after that you were in her body. Do you know how I felt? Li Chunfeng smiled. I even thought about killing you. Because before you were born, I was still thinking that maybe I could have a child in this world. And then I would really experience the feeling of being a human. Li Yunxin looked at him. You've lived for so long, but you've never had other children? I'm not a human. I've lived for a long time, but I've learned. Over the years I've gradually learned. Otherwise we wouldn't have this relationship. Then, Li Yunxin thought for a moment. Later, you two faked your deaths and left because you made a decision in your heart? At that time, yes. Li Chunfeng shook his head slightly. You gradually grew up. Your background and family allowed you to show a maturity that didn't match a child of that age. But at the same time, it didn't arouse suspicion. The child of two cultivators. No matter how smart he was, it wouldn't arouse suspicion. So, I also realized that the play of a kind father and filial son might not be able to continue soon. You didn't know anything about me when you were born, but I knew what you might be like. But as you slowly learned more and thought more, with your mind one day, you would realize that there was something wrong with me. I didn't want to wait until that day came. Li Yunxin shook his head. If I had waited until that day, maybe it wouldn't be the situation now. The reason why I don't like you now is not because you hid a lot of things from me from the beginning. I also hid a lot from you. It's because you faked your death. I used to like the first 10 years very much. I thought that you were a good father. Shangguan, you could be considered a good mother. My parents were healthy. I didn't have to worry about food and clothing, and I could experience some magical things. I was very satisfied with this kind of life. So I paid a lot of feelings for the first time. But later, you played the game of disappearing, consuming my feelings once. Then you used me as a chess piece. In your words, consciously molded me into what you wanted. Li Yunxin looked at him. I can't accept this kind of thing. You should have told me clearly from the beginning. For example, the matter of using Bai Yunxin. You should have told me from the beginning, instead of making decisions for me. Li Chunfeng heaved a sigh. I understand now, but what you did before was because you were too good at acting. Do you still remember? When you were 5 years old, I took you to the full moon cliff to attract the rosy clouds. At the top of the full moon cliff, there was a huge rock that was about to fall. I asked you to climb up and sit on it, and then I asked you if you were afraid. You said you weren't afraid. I asked you why, and you said, I know that Daddy did it for my own good. Li Yunxin tilted his face, as if he wanted to avoid something, and said, It was because I knew that you would be happy if I said that. As long as you were happy, I would have a good life. Li Chunfeng smiled. When you were 9 years old, I told you a story when I was explaining the scriptures to you. It said that there was a young man who followed his master and cultivated for 3 years. One day, when he woke up, he found that his master were no longer there. He was sleeping in an empty field. So he trained alone in the world and suffered a lot. After many years, when he was on the verge of death, his master showed up again. He told him that he had tasted all the suffering in the world and could cultivate the great way. But that person was no longer a young man, but an old man. He was furious. He said that if he was an ordinary person who had never seen the great way, perhaps he would be content with the secular world. But after learning for 3 years and ignoring him, he had lost interest in the world. He searched for his whole life, but to no avail. When he was about to die, his master showed up again. His heart was filled with resentment, and he didn't want to cultivate anymore. I asked you what you thought, and you said that person had entered the devil's path and walked the evil path. You also said that only after suffering can happiness come. That person didn't understand his master's painstaking efforts. He was a piece of rotten wood. There was no pity in throwing him away. Li Yunxin turned to stare at him. You should know that what I said to you in the past was only for you to hear. I made you happy, and I saved myself a lot of trouble. Now you're saying all this. What are you trying to say? I want to say that I actually regret it. Li Chunfeng sighed. I thought you were like me, the same kind of person as me. Since there was no emotion, I had no scruples when I did things. When you took over Long Jiao and schemed against him, you had no scruples. When I did these things to you, I also had no scruples. I thought you were open-minded and empty in my world, and there would be no hindrance in doing things. And you should be able to understand all this. I just didn't expect you to be more like a human than I thought, a purer human. People in the world always have a lot of constraints in doing things, so they are afraid of the slightest thing. But you have no constraints in your heart, so you can do whatever you want. But this matter, I hope you can restrain your thoughts. He also looked at Li Yunxin. If it's because of your resentment toward me, that you don't want to follow my plan, and insist on doing things by yourself, I can tell you that I was wrong before. He stood up from the table and repeated himself. I've done something wrong to you, but you and I made it happen together. But now we have a common goal. This time, I think we shouldn't do anything wrong again. Chapter 824. Li Yunxin turned his face away. Holding the railing, he was silent for a while. He glanced at the pedestrians on the street and saw all kinds of mortals. There were masters and servants, friends, husband and wife, mother and daughter, father and son. Perhaps every family had a different way of interacting with each other. Some were happy, while others were tormented. However, the ethics of the secular world and the various conditions necessary for survival still bound them together, forcing them to seek compromise and balance in various relationships. As Li Yunxin watched them come and go, she thought of another phrase, besieging a city. The people outside the siege wanted to walk in, and the people inside the siege wanted to walk out. This phrase was rarely used to describe blood relations. For mortals, they were already in the city from the day they were born. There was no such thing as walking in or not. Only someone with a special background like him would be in the same strange situation, outside the city. Actually, he really wanted to walk in. At least he had tried very hard in the past. He patted the railing lightly and turned his face away. It's not because of hatred. It's not because of willfulness. It's just that our values are different. I don't mind if you want to kill Jin Peng, but I can't use marriage as a cover. That's my bottom line. For other things, I agree with you asking me to talk to Qining, and I want to do it now. Your apology means nothing to me. He paused. I've gotten over it. Li Chunfeng finally heaved a sigh of relief. Okay. If you don't like that method, we can change it. I just don't want you to put yourself in danger. When you have a head-on conflict with Jin Peng, your safety is the most important thing. Your demonic power comes from the netherworld aura, so you don't have an advantage. Let's think of another way to make sure nothing happens to you. About the past, it's good that you've gotten over it. I just don't want to make any more mistakes. To you and to others. Li Yunxin smiled. I hope so. Then let's talk about Qining. Li Chunfeng activated his divine ability, and the tipsiness on his face immediately disappeared. Before you meet her, I have something to tell you. I have been in contact with her, and I have some idea of her character. This person, her thoughts are not deep. What's scary is her temperament. Li Chunfeng said slowly in a low voice. When you first met her, you'd think she was an innocent woman, lively and cheerful, just like those women in the mortal world who didn't know the dangers of the world. But in reality, this person is decisive and has an extremely cold temperament. Whether it was the Shinryu, the Golden Rock, or the people of Shimizu, she used them all. Perhaps she did have some feelings for them in the beginning, such as love and friendship. But once he had no choice but to abandon these feelings, he would not be reluctant to part with them. In the secular world, when people interact with others, they are as warm as fire one day, but fall out the next day. She is similar. Li Yunxin was slightly taken aback. The Chen Zhao that Li Chunfeng mentioned was something he didn't expect. Previously, when he saw the various traces she left in this world, such as those clumsy paintings, he felt that the art saint was a mischievous girl. But after reading the diary she left in the Jade Scroll, his impression changed. He felt that she was mischievous, but also kind and responsible. After learning about Chen Zhao's various affairs from the people of Shimizu, this image became complicated in his heart. But he also knew that this was due to her special social environment in the past. In fact, she was very much like the kind of person who didn't care about sex, who was passionate and heartless. This kind of person might have a messy private life, but when it came to doing business, she would have a certain sense of responsibility and morality. Of course, it referred to the morality of some grand goals. But he didn't expect Li Chunfeng's evaluation of her was extremely cold temperament. But thinking about it carefully, it didn't contradict the previous impression he had. There were always two sides to a person's work, public and private. It wasn't uncommon to see people who were passionate, responsible, and moral when it came to official matters, but extremely cold and merciless when it came to personal matters. It could even be said that in his previous world, most people who held power were like this. They could cry, hold your hand and say that they couldn't bear to part with you, and then tell you to die. He thought about it. You're saying that Chen Zhao might harm me? I'm just telling you to be careful of this. Li Chunfeng looked at him seriously. Everything we think about now, whether it's yours or mine, is from your point of view, to protect you and then save the world. But to her, you're just someone else. If there's a way to get a better result, I guess she'll sacrifice you without hesitation. Just like how she sacrificed Shinryu. I've deduced it a few times. Although I didn't think of a better way than what we've thought of, it's not impossible. She's also a smart person. Don't expose too much information in front of her, such as your personality and preferences. She'll hear about all these things, but when she really sees you, she'll definitely think about it carefully. You have to keep your composure. Li Yunxin thought about it carefully for a while and said, your suggestion sounds reasonable. Li Chunfeng shook his head and smiled. Now that you're already the Grand Supreme, I don't have any other thoughts. I just want this world not to be destroyed like where I was. Then let's wait. Wait for what? In the past, when I contacted Chen Zhao, she would only reply after a few days, Li Chunfeng said. You have to stay in Shuanghu City for a few more days. I'll stay in this restaurant, but if there's any news, I'll inform you immediately. Do you plan to? I'll stay with you, Meng. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. Forget it. I'm going to buy a house for him anyway, so I'll just buy a new one. Li Chunfeng immediately said, I'll do it. I've traveled the human world these years, and met many people. The Freemasons in Munanju can use it too. It's very convenient. Do you like the house Yu Meng is living in now? Li Yunxin was stunned. The owner of the house is from the Freemasons? Munanju. If you like it, I want him to move out. I won't mistreat him financially. It should not be a difficult decision to make. Li Yunxin hesitated for a full 3 breaths before saying, okay. Then, he jumped down the building and landed on the street. At that moment he used his magical powers. They saw him leap from the 3rd floor, and land lightly on the ground like a falling leaf. They also saw his face, which was inhuman in beauty, and his clothes, which could not be described by the word expensive. But no one was surprised. It was as if he was just an ordinary passerby. At most, someone glanced at him, but a voice in his head quickly told him, it's not a big deal. Li Yunxin walked through the streets and alleys, disappearing from Li Chunfeng's sight. He turned into another street, and walked slowly with the pedestrians. Finally, he saw a father and son and followed them. It was a thin, dark-skinned man in coarse clothes and his child, who was about 5 or 6 years old. When Li Yunxin was 5 or 6, he could already climb high cliffs with Li Chunfeng, but this child was as thin as a matchstick man. His big head was on a thin neck, and he lacked curiosity about the people and things on the street. It wasn't the kind of lack of fear and timidity, but the kind of lifelessness that came from experiencing the torture of life and the hunger in the belly. Just walking and living was exhausting, so he didn't have the energy to be curious. In fact, many people in the world were like this. It seemed that even in this era, in this Shuanghu city, this father and son were not living very well. Li Yunxin was 5 or 6 steps behind them, so he could hear their conversation clearly. The man took the child's hand and whispered to him. What he said was, "When we go to your granduncle's house, call someone first. If you call someone, stay on the side and don't touch anything. If someone gives you food, don't eat it. If someone asks you if you're hungry, say you're not. When you ask your mother, you say that your mother is sick and that you want to borrow money for her to see a doctor or something like that." The child responded weakly. The man turned to look at him, then picked him up and walked away. But after walking for a while, his forehead was sweating. In this chilly spring season, Li Yunxin could see that his heart was beating very fast, and his arms were trembling slightly, as if he was carrying something heavy. In fact, the child was so skinny that he probably weighed less than 20 kilograms. It seemed that the man was also very weak and hungry. After walking for a few dozen steps, they turned again and entered an alley. The first house in the alley had a black lacquered wooden door, with 2 pairs of small stone lions in front of it. The house was not as big as the one Yu Meng lived in, but it still looked rich. If it was in the world he came from, this family would be living near the business circle of the First Ring Road. The man didn't put the child down, but held him and knocked on the door. The door opened, and a servant in green poked his head out to take a look. His expression didn't change, and he only said politely, "Granduncle is here? I'll go and inform him." Then he looked at the child in the man's arms and said, "Young master has grown up again." Then he welcomed the 2 into the door, and asked them to sit by the door and wait. Li Yunxin followed them in. The man glanced at him, and the servant also glanced at him, but they didn't say anything, as if he didn't exist, as if he was a stone or a piece of wood. While waiting, the man didn't put the child down. After about half an hour, the servant came back and said, "Master isn't here, and madam can't see guests. Granduncle, if you have anything to say, you can tell me. Master is back, I'll report back." But Li Yunxin knew that after the servant went to the back of the house, it was also very convenient for madam to see guests when master wasn't here. The original words of those 2 were, "Give them 3 taels of silver and send them away. It's annoying to see them." From the beginning to the end, even when waiting, the man's expression was wooden. It was completely different from when he ordered the child on the street. He just held his son tightly in his arms. Li Yunxin stared at him, as if he wanted to see something from his face. Li Chunfeng also held him when he was a child. He couldn't remember that feeling clearly, but he didn't hate it at that time, nor did he like it, because whether it was at that time or later, they weren't real father and child. It would be hard for an intellectual adult to feel held by another adult. But when the child grew up and thought about this moment, desperate to go to a relative's house with his father to borrow money for his mother's medical treatment, but he was left hanging in the gatehouse, and his father was worried that he would be tired, so he kept holding him. Would he really be touched and feel that this was rare fatherly love? This man was good to this child, and ordinary people were good to children, so he didn't care or have any ulterior motives. That should be pure love. After the servant said these words, the man panicked a little. So he said, "Ahuan is sick again. I went to see a doctor before the new year, and he said he would gradually get better after the winter. Now the winter is over, but I still can't get up, so I want to get some medicine for Ahuan." Hearing this, the servant carefully asked about Ahuan's illness. After asking, he thought for a while and asked the child again. The child did as his father asked and stammered. Only then did the manservant feel around his chest. He took out an ingot of silver. He said, "I guess that Master Gu had some difficulties, so I talked to Sister Yu and got a tael of silver from her. When Master returns, I'll go and tell him." She handed the silver to the man. The man didn't think it was too little. He didn't know that the owner of the house had originally given him 3 taels of silver. He thanked him profusely and left with the child. Li Yunxin stared at the manservant for a while and narrowed his eyes. But in the end, she did nothing but follow the man out. However, There was already a clone left in the gatehouse, following the green-clothed servant. The man carried the child out of the alley and put the child down. Holding his hand, she walked to the front of a bakery. He exchanged 1 tael of silver for 100 copper coins and spent 5 copper coins to buy 10 pancakes and a bowl of soup pancakes. He asked for an extra bowl and made 2 bowls of soup cakes. Squatting with the child outside the shop to eat. The child was full after eating half a bowl, and the man ate 3 more pancakes. Then he gave the remaining 7 pancakes to the child and told him to take them home. The child ran away with the pancakes in his arms. The man got up and burped. The dull expression on his face disappeared. He walked 2 more streets and turned into the victorious gambling square. In layman's terms, it was a casino. Li Yunxin stood in front of the casino and watched the people coming and going for a while. Those who walked past him felt an inexplicable chill. It was a chill like a bone-piercing north wind. The expressions of several Jianghu people in the casino changed. They touched their weapons, but they didn't know where they felt a murderous aura. But the murderous aura quickly disappeared. Li Yunxin's figure was no longer in front of the casino. The original body returned to the clone. He appeared next to the green-clothed servant. The original body and the clone felt different people and things at the same time, experienced different emotions, but could harmoniously adapt to each other and be digested. This feeling was very strange. Perhaps people who could draw a circle with their left hand and draw a square with their right hand could slightly experience a similar feeling. Just as the man left with the child, ate the pancakes, walked a few more streets and turned into the casino, the servant also did a few things. First, he asked for leave from the sister Yu, he mentioned to the man before. You should be a maid of a higher class. At that time, she was reading with the young master of that family. She occasionally gave the seemingly dull young master some words and poems. She didn't have time to ask for details, so she agreed. Then the servant changed into casual clothes and walked out from the back door. After walking through 3 alleys, he went to a medicinal soup shop and bought 6 sets of heat-clearing medicine. It cost him 3 taels of silver. Then he went into another shop and ordered a small portion of cooked lamb and 20 boiled eggs, which cost him 16 copper coins. Li Yunxin followed him and looked at him silently, his eyes uncertain. Finally, it took the servant an hour to reach the south side of Shuanghu City. This area was different from the previous streets and alleys. The road was muddy and dirty, full of filth. The houses were also low and dilapidated. Many of them were just straw huts. He entered a thatched house with a small courtyard. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned for a long time. At this time, the child hadn't arrived home yet. There was a woman lying on the bed in the house. Her hair was disheveled and her face dirty, but it could be seen that she was in her 20s and had some beauty in the past. The servant entered the door. The woman looked at him from the Kong, but didn't say anything. So the servant started a fire to boil the medicine, but he didn't have any firewood. So he went to a shop 2 streets away to buy firewood and carried it back. While the medicine was boiling, he sat by the Kong and peeled an egg for the woman to eat. The woman stared at him for a long time, then opened her mouth and ate it. Then he tore the lamb for her to eat. Both of them were silent. Li Yunxin, who was standing next to them, was also silent. After eating, the woman cried while eating. The servant also cried. Then he hugged his head and cried bitterly. When they cried bitterly, their words were broken and unclear. But Li Yunxin heard them clearly. The woman was the daughter of a distant relative of the master of the servant's family. Because her family was gone, she came here to seek shelter. After that, she fell in love with the servant for a long time. When she was 4 months old, the truth came out. She was beaten, scolded, and questioned, but she didn't say who the adulterer was. So one night, she was randomly married off. Li Yunxin watched them cry. When they cried enough, the servant said, "If he comes back to ask, tell him that the master was worried and sent me to see him." Then he hurriedly left. Only then did Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief and slowly sat down on the edge of the Kong. After sitting like that for a quarter of an hour, he raised his hand and touched the woman's forehead. She quickly felt strength in her body and no longer felt pain. Then Li Yunqin walked out of the door and saw that the child had just returned, holding 7 pieces of flatbread. He happily ran into the door and gave them to the woman. So the woman took the rest of the lamb and peeled 2 eggs for the child to eat. When the child was full, he ran into the courtyard to play. When the woman felt strength in her body, she also got out of the kong. She walked around, looked around, and began to tidy up the house and the courtyard. Li Yunqin sat on the low wall of the small courtyard and watched the child play. Slowly he frowned. He began to ask himself a question. Would the man who entered the gambling house feel guilty to this child one day and confess to him out of conscience? Would a gambling addict who used a child to beg for money have a conscience? If he had a conscience, why would he do such a thing? And Li Chunfeng? Today, Li Chunfeng acted like a remorseful and compassionate father. Why would he do such things in the past? This was not like him. Chapter 825. He also realized something else. The servant, the woman, and the gambling addict were all in a relationship that was not pleasant, but seemed impossible to get rid of. But he was a third party, so he could think of some practical solutions. That man was addicted to gambling and had no bottom line. In this day and age, it was impossible for him to have a meteoric rise and turn over a new leaf. Not to mention repenting and turning over a new leaf. If the woman followed him, she would only sink deeper and deeper, and eventually die in poverty and disease. It was better to run. But in such an age, it was difficult for a woman to survive alone. She used to be a young lady, so she should not know how to do farm work. In fact, she could persuade the servant to run with her. That servant should be a typical affectionate, but weak guy who lacked courage and responsibility. When the woman was about to be married away, he did not stand up for her. After a few years, he still cherished old feelings. Otherwise, he would not have risked his life to see this disgraced woman and cry bitterly. Such a person, if the woman was more resolute, whether it was coercion or begging, there was a high chance that he could be persuaded. Then the 2 of them would run to another town. Judging from the way the servant worked, he must have saved up some money and start a new life. If they did not seek wealth, it should not be difficult to live a comfortable life. From his point of view, from God's point of view, all of this was clear at a glance. But the people in it did not know. Their rational judgment was influenced by their emotions and experiences. The woman was afraid of the unknown world, and did not know if the servant had the courage, and did not know what to do with the child. The servant was familiar with the house, so he did things like a fish in water, and was trusted. So they were content with this kind of life and afraid of change. Emotions affected their minds. Li Yunqin stood up and rose into the air, so he could see the whole courtyard. A little higher, and he could see the whole Shuanghu city. Higher, higher. He tried to see his past in full view. He tried to see, from the perspective of a third party, the entanglement between him and Li Chunfeng. Then he finally realized something was wrong. Li Chunfeng, who had meticulously planned and tried to control the situation of the world, was a meticulous person. He should have known that he would never accept the idea of marrying Bai Yunqin and then killing Golden Rock after he let down his guard. He had plotted behind the scenes and done so many things. But now he said that he regretted destroying the relationship between the 2 of them. This kind of thing could happen to people with low EQ but strong work skills. But it shouldn't happen to Li Chunfeng. The reason why he had not realized this before was that, like the woman, he had been caught up in an emotion and had lost some of his rational judgment. Indeed, it was difficult for a person like him to jump out and wake up from more than 10 years of past experiences. But if Li Chunfeng was acting for her to see, what was he trying to do? What he said about saving the world, was it true or false? As for what she was thinking now, was it because she had really jumped out and accepted it? Or was it because she was still affected by the unwillingness and uneasiness in her heart, that she still made the wrong judgment and misunderstood him? Li Yunqin stayed in the cold wind high up in the sky for a long time. His gaze fixed on the restaurant where Li Chunfeng was staying in Twin Tiger City. Surging killing intent surged around him. and even the fierce wind hurriedly retreated, as if it was frightened. He slowly raised his hand and pointed at the building. Dark light gathered at his fingertips, and the surrounding air began to heat up. Just like that, a quarter of an hour passed. He put down his hand. "I'll give you a chance." He exhaled softly and said in a low voice, "I'll give you another chance." After staying in the sky for a while, Li Yunqin finally returned to the ground. At this time, the woman had already cleaned up the courtyard, got 3 sticks of incense from somewhere, and burned them in front of the door. With Li Yunqin's current realm, the power of faith from incense was almost negligible to him. But if one were to carefully observe it, they could still feel it. Therefore, he realized that when this woman was murmuring some incantation and worshipping someone, her sincere gratitude had actually flowed into his own body. The person she was worshipping was the leader of the dragon cult, the Wei River Dragon King. Therefore, he also realized that no matter whether Ing Juren had changed or not, there was one thing that he had done very well. Wherever Rong Jun went, people would only worship him, the god. Ever since he came to the land, he had been using his power cautiously. Because his body was filled with netherworld power, he knew that he couldn't replenish it easily. Therefore, in this midland, every time he used it, he would have less of it. But now, it seemed that if he stayed in this place long enough, he would slowly become stronger. More and more people had been worshipping him. He glanced at the woman again, then turned around, leapt down from the wall, and walked away. Before, when he was at a low stage, the power of faith from people had flowed into his body, just like a small stream flowing into a small pond. He could feel that his body had changed quite obviously, but as his realm got higher and higher, the power of faith that flowed into his body was like a small stream, or a river flowing into a vast and boundless ocean. If he did not deliberately explore it, it would be difficult to feel anything clearly. Since he realized that he had received the incense from that woman, he paid attention when he slowly walked out of this slum area. Therefore, he realized that it was not only that woman who was worshipping him, but there were also other people. But most of them were not happy emotions. Most of the worshippers were in annoyance, pain, and sadness. They were probably pitiful people who could not find any way to change their fate or get out of their predicament in the real world. So they placed their hopes on the god. But they did not know that the god they were worshipping also had his own troubles and worries, and it was impossible for him to fulfill their wishes one by one. Even if he had the White Hell King's dermic art of myriad incarnations, he wouldn't be able to do it. Li Yunqin sighed and did not pay attention to it anymore. Therefore, the disturbing emotions that he experienced were also pushed out of his consciousness. He used a quarter of an hour to leave this slum area, and stepped onto a slightly cleaner street. The houses with high walls and green tiles gradually increased. Although it was not very grand, he could tell that the people living in it had already solved the problem of food and clothing. Therefore, they had the leisure to plant a tall loquat tree in the courtyard, or plant some flowers outside the wall, or in front of the door, and set up horse posts. He turned into an alley, and walked towards the area where Yu Meng lived. He had just taken 2 steps when he heard someone say, "Hey Li Yunqin." He was stunned and stopped. Someone could actually see him. He turned to look at the source of the voice, and found that it was an 8 or 9-year-old girl with her hair tied into 2 buns. She was sitting on the wall of her own courtyard, next to an old locust tree. There were new buds on the branches, and from afar, it looked like it was covered by a thin layer of green smoke. The crown of the tree also protruded out of the wall. The girl should have climbed up the tree. Seeing that Li Yunqin was looking at her, the girl waved her hand. "Come here." Li Yunqin frowned slightly, and used his power to look at her. He found that it was really just an ordinary girl, not a clone or an illusion. There was no demonic power, spiritual power, or netherworld aura in her body. After being stunned for a moment, the girl tilted her head and said with a smile, "I'm Chening. You're looking for me?" Li Yunqin slowly relaxed his brows, and looked at her carefully again. He walked to the wall and looked up at her. "This is the original?" The girl blinked and smiled again. "Sort of. My clone just reincarnated into her body. Just now." She climbed the tree and the wall, and accidentally fell to her death. Chunning pointed at the back of her head as she spoke. Look. That's why I reincarnated. The girl was relatively clean. Even if there was some dust, it was normal for naughty children of her age to play. But the hair on the back of her head was wet, and she was indeed bleeding. Li Yunxin thought for a moment and said, Why don't you talk like them? The girl smiled slyly. You mean cast a shadow like Shenmu? That way the other side will know what we're talking about. But I don't want others to know what I'm talking to you. She smiled again. Now you believe that I'm chinning? Li Yunxin reached into his sleeve and took out the jade slip. So the password? The girl told him the password and looked at him with interest. You're the same as what I heard from the other side. You're indeed cautious. Because there are too many strange things in this world. Li Yunxin exhaled softly. Fine. What do you want to say to me? Are you afraid that others will know? I'm not afraid of what I'll say. I'm afraid of what you'll say. You read my diary in the jade slip. They don't know many things, and I don't want them to hear. Li Yunxin hesitated for a moment. You should come down. The family will see you. Chunning jumped down. The wall was 2 meters tall. When she jumped down, she lost her balance and almost fell. Li Yunxin instinctively helped her up, but he quickly retracted his hand. Thank you. The girl patted the dirt off her clothes and shrunk her neck. The blood on the back of her head had already flowed into her collar. This seemed to make her very uncomfortable. Then she said, I can stay here for a long time, before I turn into a zombie. So if you have anything to ask me, take your time. If you want to say it, take your time. I heard that you're an interesting person. She sat down against the wall without a care. She was like a real child who was tired of playing, and came to rest without caring about the dirt on the ground. Li Yunxin looked at her. He put his left hand behind his back, and took out his fan with his right. He opened it with a swish and stood still before saying, let me think. I have too many questions to ask you. For example, if you don't want others to know about your diary, why did you leave the jade slip here? It's fun, she said and stopped talking. She looked at Li Yunxin up and down. Why are you so nervous? The latter smiled. How am I nervous? You're nervous. Li Yunxin smiled again. You're wrong. Why else would I fan myself? The girl said, giggling. Do you feel like you can't place your hands and feet properly? That's called elegance. But you're holding the fan upside down. Li Yunxin immediately looked down and realized that there was nothing wrong with the fan. He sighed, put away his fan, and squatted down beside the wall. All right, let's go. Fine, a little. But if you've been hearing about someone for a long time and they finally appear, it won't be very peaceful, right? Plus, we're talking about saving the world. You can think of it as me worrying about the fate of the world. Ah, so you already know what Li Chunfeng wants to say. The girl thought for a moment. What's his detailed plan? What's it like? He didn't want to talk about it before. Li Yunxin spent a moment to organize his thoughts, and then told her everything about Li Chunfeng's plan. As he spoke, he was also observing Chun Zhao's expression. But he couldn't see anything. Just like a real child, her expression was too natural. She frowned when she heard something she didn't understand, but felt relieved when she understood. Maybe she reincarnated into a new corpse for this effect. When he finished, Chunning said, Golden Rock is indeed a problem. You and Li Chunfeng are right. We can't let him become a threat and an unstable factor. But, if you fight him alone, what if you break his body and he can't use it? Li Yunxin smiled. There's always a way. The girl frowned and thought for a moment. Actually, it's not a big deal if he's broken. At most, it'll be a bit troublesome to save Zhao Jin. Actually, it's not a big deal even if we can't save him. Then, Li Yunxin only said 2 words and stopped. He felt that what Chen Zhao said just now might be one of the things she didn't want the person over there to hear. From the diary and Qingshui's words, he knew that Chen Zhao seemed to like Shenmu a lot. But what surprised him even more was that she didn't hide it at all. This made him have a new understanding of her personality. The girl felt his gaze and looked at him. Oh, I know what you're thinking. But if you like someone, you should fight for it. There are 2 female demons who like you, and you just rejected Bai Yunxin. Is it because you really don't like her, or because you want to be faithful to Li Xinyu? Actually, it's not necessary. It's not strange to have multiple wives at this time. They won't be unable to accept it. Li Yunqin frowned. Let's talk business. Oh, people in your era can't accept it. Chen Zhao smiled and winked. It's okay. You'll get used to it slowly. Li Yunqin crossed his arms and rested them on his knees. We have different views on this issue, so let's not discuss it for now. What I want to ask is that Li Chunfeng said that using his method, I'll have to pay a huge price. It'll bring corruption to my world. Is there something else that he didn't say? You know him very well. Chunning smiled. I asked Shenmu before I came. There are indeed some problems. But he didn't explain it clearly. Actually, it's like this. You know that the corruption happens in space and time. For example, your world doesn't have any myths. Or those myths are really just made up by people. But when the corruption starts and other forces invade, those myths may become true. In layman's terms, the history of the world will be rewritten the moment you go back, because you've led the corruption there. Of course, the effect shouldn't be too big in the beginning, so you won't disappear. There's a limit to the rewriting. But the problem is that when you go back and return to your previous world, your memories and experiences will also be affected. So, your thoughts will slowly become chaotic. Once you stay here for a long time, you might forget everything here. Chapter 826. Forget. Li Yunqin frowned. How long will it take for me to forget? Maybe a few days? Maybe 10 days. Anyway, very soon. That's because you have the power of this world in your body. But that power will also be restricted when you go back. You definitely won't be able to be the Grand Elder there. I don't care about that. Li Yunqin thought slowly and said, worst comes to worst, I'll go back for a few days and then come back. It'll be like a vacation. But what does it mean when legends come true? How many gods appear out of thin air? The girl thought about it. She looked innocent, but because of her serious expression, she looked a little cute. As they spoke, people passed by in the alley, but they ignored Li Yunqin. Occasionally, someone would recognize the girl and say something like, Qiu came out to play. Chen Zhao would then smile sweetly at them. Who knew how the person would feel when they found out that the girl had fallen to her death, and that she was already a corpse when she smiled at them? Because of inertia. She fiddled with her fingers. Your world has inertia too, because of the inertia of the original rules. So when changes are made, the rewriting of history will first fill in some places that are full of possibilities. It's hard to say. The principle is very complicated. But think of it as something like wishes in this world. People like to believe in those myths and legends, so they might attract things from the outside world. Or rather, when things from the outside world come to your world, they like to find things like that first. Look, when I drew Shinryu and Kyuko, I stayed in this world for a long time, and created many legends about the divine dragon before I drew them. Because it's easier this way. Li Yunqin felt that Chen Zhao's ability to express herself might not be as good as her ability in other areas. He thought hard for a while before saying, You mean, after the two worlds merge, if there are creatures in the other world, like Li Chunfeng, then if they want to invade our world, they'll most likely appear in the form of the gods in our world's myths and legends? Because that's what people thought in the past, so they're like, some kind of emptiness. Something like that. You speak better than me. Li Yunqin ignored her compliment. Then, will there be other creatures? You said that if I return to my world, I will bring the erosion here with me. But the universe that is merging with this world doesn't seem to have any living creatures, right? Probably. Chen Zhao smiled at someone who seemed to know her, and then looked at Li Yunqin. So you see, this is one of the risks that Li Chunfeng didn't tell you. If there were no other creatures, then your world would be the same as ours, slowly changing. For example, the revival of spiritual energy, the gradual emergence of people with special abilities, and so on. And because history has been completely rewritten, people won't feel like it just happened. They would take it for granted that those people had existed since ancient times, and were just hiding. But from the perspective of that world at that time, that was indeed the case. She paused and stopped smiling. She looked at Li Yunqin seriously. These are the risks that you'll probably have to bear. Or rather, the risks that you'll bring to your world. Actually, for the first time, she looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Actually, it's okay if you don't want to do it. Li Yunqin was stunned. Huh, people like us can rely on ourselves, Chen Zhao said. Li Zhen and my ancestors saved the world once. We're quite familiar with things like the end of the world. If we can't think of a good solution in the end, it's not a big deal if we all get destroyed with the world. After all, we tried our best. And I don't like those people. You should know after reading my diary. Li Yunqin realized that she was talking about the Celestials. But he didn't expect Chen Zhao's attitude. He thought that after working so hard for so many years, they would be like drowning people, desperately grasping at anything they could grab. He didn't expect her to say something like, "It's not a big deal if we get destroyed." This was the second time he had a new understanding of her since they met. Is that what you think, or what everyone on your side thinks? It's mine. The girl sighed softly like a little adult. They're hard to understand. You should be hard to understand too. But the people on my side, I mean the people from the place I came from, should all be able to understand. Actually, we're having a hard time. Think about it. So many people are floating in space, relying on those huge starships to maintain their lives. No matter how sturdy and technologically advanced they are, they're not as safe as a big planet. Encountering meteorite belts, collisions, malfunctions, wars, people can die easily in those kinds of environments. So we don't really care about life and death. I've seen a lot of destruction. After coming here, I feel that even though the world is at the end of its road, people's lives are wonderful. So death and destruction are not a big deal. If you don't want to bring risks to your world, it's not a big deal not to do it. Li Yunqin was silent for a long while. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he experienced this feeling, or met someone like this. If what she was saying was her true thoughts. Ever since he came to this world, he saw people constantly fighting for things. Fighting for treasures, resources, and everything that could be beneficial to them. Every single one of them was crazily calculating, and fighting for the greatest benefits for themselves. They were willing to stop at nothing. Even those mortals who didn't seem threatening, Li Yunqin knew that they were also fighting for each other. But he heard such carefree words from Chen Zhao. But he could also hear that it was a very passive carefreeness, because he had seen too much destruction and death. He was tired. So he just wanted to do what he had to do as hard as he could, as if he was fulfilling a given responsibility. Then, if he didn't get any good results, he would accept his fate. He didn't expect the art saint to be so depressed. He turned to look at her, thought for a moment, and asked in a low voice, "You said war. What's going on? Will the people who left the solar system still have a civil war?" "It's not a civil war. It's a war with another civilization." When she said this, she saw the surprise on Li Yunqin's face. She smiled proudly. Her expression was like the weather in June, changing on a whim. "Hey, there's nothing to be surprised about. We've been fleeing for tens of thousands of years, and passed through 2 large galaxies. It's natural to meet other civilizations. Okay, but aliens? It's the first time I've heard of one." Li Yunqin scratched his head. "Why did you start a war?" He felt very relaxed when he was with this mysterious art saint, who was deep and cold in Li Chuanfeng's heart. Perhaps it was because of her childlike appearance. At first, it was because of resources. I heard that before we left the Milky Way, resources were very scarce. Expanding the fleet, ensuring survival conditions, and developing technology all required resources. But at that time, we didn't know how long it would take for the erosion behind us to catch up, and whether there would be any unexpected changes. So everyone panicked, wanting to escape as far as possible, and bring more things with them. You know, it's like a person going out for the first time. They worry about this and that, afraid that they won't be prepared enough. So almost everywhere they went, they tore down everything. Then they met some alien civilizations. Of course they weren't happy. So they started a war with them and exterminated them all. Li Yunqin's eyes widened in surprise. All of them? Haven't you met any powerful ones? It's said that people were also surprised at that time. Later on, they said it was possible because the development of a civilization requires suitable conditions. For example, the age of the universe is more than 10 billion years old. In the past, people thought that countless civilizations must have been born in the past 10 billion years. But now, it's said that the environment suitable for the development of civilization has only recently appeared. So whether it's humans or aliens, they belong to the first wave. We can be considered the top students of this first wave. But the current saying is that the environment suitable for the development of civilization has only recently appeared. So both humans and aliens belong to the first wave. We can be considered the top students of this first wave. Actually, it's also because the erosion happened in the solar system. We have a lot of technology from the outer universe. It's a great advantage. Li Yunqin sighed, not knowing what to say. But for some reason, he felt that he was honored by it. At that time, our starship civilization was called the Destroyer. The aliens called it Far. After that, they slowly adapted to life on the run, and they were not so afraid and anxious. They might stay in one place for a period of time to rest, or even stay on a planet with better conditions for a few generations. Some people got used to it and didn't want to leave, so we left them there, and the rest continued to move. In fact, this is also because of inertia. Moving forward is dangerous and difficult, but we can get a lot of things. We can get things from other civilizations, from a different cosmic environment. After that, after the Andromeda Nebula, resources aren't too big a problem. They become conditions. All kinds of conditions needed to develop new technology. Maybe an experiment or something could destroy one of the spiral arms or something. At that time, our people will actually become more civilized. After a period of reflection, we said that it was a crime to destroy so many civilizations, and for this reason, we even put many people who died long ago on trial. It's also a farce. But at that time, some civilizations were not willing to do things. They felt that if they changed the environment at their doorstep, they might start a war again. Li Yunqin remembered that Xiexing also said something similar. What restricted the development of civilization was no longer resources but conditions. So, if it's not necessary, we don't want to destroy other worlds. When I arrived, one of our resource supply fleets was enough to destroy a high-level civilization. Some people did this, and were severely punished. That is called the civilization extinction crime. If because of this world, the erosion of your world, actually, in a sense, it is also considered a civilization extinction crime. But if the erosion really starts in your world, it will be at least a few 100 million years before your world is destroyed because of the erosion. So, the girl sighed. If you don't want to do this, I won't force you. Li Yunqin thought for a while. He felt that he understood something. In the past, Li Chunfeng wanted to use him, and so did Priest Qingxue. Priest Qingxue was Chen Zhao's man. But Chen Zhao had never contacted him, as if he didn't care about his existence. From the looks of it now, if what she said was true, it should be because of this idea of hers. She didn't really like Li Chunfeng's plan. She didn't really like being a channel to save this world at the cost of leading the calamity into another world. Since Chen Zhao had said something ambiguous, she wouldn't give him a clearer answer. She said that she reincarnated into this girl's body to not let the people over there know their conversation. Then the thing that she said but didn't say clearly was also because she didn't want the people over there to know. So she was being vague? Li Yunqin could only keep this in mind for now and said, "You can try to reveal some truth to him. See if he's willing to let go of the things he has now. If you can, there's no need to start another dispute." As for his great upper body, at this point he suddenly had an idea. Shen Mu wanted Zhao Jin to come to this world, so she needed a great upper body as a vessel. The golden rock was a good choice. Changing one's body was something that anyone with a little bit of cultivation could do. With the Golden Rock's great upper body, it was easy to use the art Dao to change it into a woman's body. Although this kind of change couldn't last, this can't refer to hundreds or even thousands of years. People like Shenmu wouldn't care. Actually, other than the thought of this body's previous appearance, there was nothing to worry about. The art saint said those mysterious words, and then immediately mentioned the great upper body. Was he referring to this? Was he asking him to add something extra when he transformed this body for Zhao Jin? For example, asking her to forget Shenmu or not love or care for him anymore. But was this her style of doing things? For a moment, he felt that his head was even more chaotic. Chen Zhao smiled. There's no need to ask. He won't. Saving Zhao Jin. Sigh. If you want to save him, go ahead. This is also your choice. If you want to save this world, you have to appease Shenmu. You have to rely on him to send you back. Li Yunqing could only say, but you didn't seem to want Zhao Jin to come here before. Chen sighed. That's just my opinion. There are so many choices in this world. Not all of them are beneficial to you. I can't interfere with you guys. I can only wait to accept it. Li Yunqing realized that she was depressed again. Perhaps this was a unique temperament of people from her civilization. Negative and depressed emotions mixed with an extreme sense of responsibility, forming a strange harmony. If he really had to make an analogy, it was actually a little like the situation in his world. A young man worked hard in a big city. The competition was fierce and life wasn't easy. However, he had strong and specialized skills. Later, he couldn't resist his parents and returned to his small city. In terms of doing his job, he was very outstanding and responsible. But other than that, he lacked motivation and passion. He became depressed. Xiesheng wasn't as depressed, but his spirit was similar to Chen Ying's when he first came to this world. The only difference between the two was probably due to the difference in character. But if one were to remove the differences brought about by the gender difference, it seemed to be similar. Chapter 827. Then I'll do what I want. Li Yunqing stood up slowly. The alley became even darker and windy. Chen Zhao stared at him. The two heard the family call Qiuqiu from behind the high wall. The girl sighed. I'm going to turn into a zombie. I should go back. What else do you want to say? Li Yunqing thought for a moment. Nice to see you. Chen Zhao forced a smile. Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye. The girl's eyes suddenly lost their light and her body froze. Li Yunqing bent down and pulled the corner of her lips, wiping away the smile on the corpse. Then he closed her eyes. He quickly walked out of the alley. Finally, he had time to think about what Chen Zhao's vague words meant. As he pondered this in his heart, he walked to the main street. He saw a group of soldiers jogging toward the other end of the street. They were armed with swords and spears. Something seemed to have happened. He didn't have to get close to see like mortals. He just needed to scan with his spiritual power. It seemed like someone had died in a tea house. The body was lying on the ground. Someone had slit the neck. Before dying, the person had struggled for a while and written the word Gongqi on the ground with his own blood. He hadn't finished writing the second word. Normal people didn't know what it meant, but Li Yunqing was familiar with it. Was it the Freemasons? But hadn't Li Chunfeng already taken them in? Frowning, Chen Zhao scanned the wider area with his spiritual power. Instantly, he found 3 more bodies. They hadn't been discovered yet. What was Li Chunfeng doing? Chen Zhao didn't walk anymore. With a flash, he appeared in the restaurant Li Chunfeng was staying in. Previously, he'd only booked the 3rd floor. Now he'd booked the entire floor. When he appeared in the hall, he saw Li Chunfeng sitting by the window. There were a few other people in the hall. They froze when they saw him. Just as they were about to scold him, Li Chunfeng said in a low voice, "This is your sect leader. Didn't you say you wanted to see him? Why don't you greet him?" Those people stared blankly for a moment, then their eyes lit up. They kowtowed and shouted in unison, "Sect master above, Zhua Yinglu Mei Yizhen, Shang Yin Lan, and Zhu Xiaoyu of the painting faction greet the sect master." Li Yunxin looked at them, then at Li Chunfeng. What's going on? Only then did Li Chunfeng say to them, get up. Tell sect master about the current situation. The four of them stood up. The man named Zhua Yinglu bowed again and said in a deep voice, Sect master, please allow me to report. I just learned that the Freemasons have defected and joined the Golden Rock Fort, and they even brought some news with them. Several disciples in the city have been killed. I wonder what else they have taken away. These people should be the newly formed school of painting in this world. Li Yunxin noticed that they were all at the transcendent state. They could be considered as decent cultivators. However, he didn't believe a single word that Zhua Yinglu said. He didn't think that Zhua Yinglu was lying to him. But that Zhua Yinglu was also kept in the dark. The remnants of the Freemasons that Li Chunfeng had subdued had defected and taken away some news right under his nose? If Li Chunfeng was that stupid, he would have died a long time ago. He turned to look at him again. Li Chunfeng blinked his eyes. Thus Li Yunxin understood. She gave a faint "n" and turned to go upstairs. Then, he heard Li Chunfeng giving them some orders in the living room at a fast speed. At first glance, it sounded like some emergency measures to reduce losses. He even mentioned asking them to ask Rong Jun for help in the name of Li Yunxin, so that they could work together to intercept and kill the Freemasons. The four assented, and made additional suggestions of their own, which were all accepted. Li Yunxin went up to the second floor, and sat down at a table. By then, the sun had already set behind the distant mountains. Double Tiger City became dark. Only then did he realize that he had only been in the city for a day. When he arrived in the morning, he first met Li Chunfeng. Then, he saw that Li Yunxin was in a daze. Then, he came back and asked Li Yunxin to find him. After strolling on the streets, Chen Zhao arrived. Now, it had only been a few hours. It was still as leisurely as when he was in Wei City. After sitting for half an hour, the streets in the city were lit up. Then, he saw a few groups of Rong Jun on the streets with torches in their hands, as if they were searching for someone. He sighed inwardly. Rong Jun was also very efficient. He wondered if it was because of his reputation. Then Li Chunfeng also went upstairs. When he appeared at the staircase, he said, I didn't expect Chen Zhao to see you so soon. I was caught off guard. I had to use this method. Li Yunxin turned to look at him. You asked the Freemasons to rebel? Yes. Li Chunfeng waved his hand casually, and the second floor lit up. According to Chen Zhao's habits, he should only see you after a few days. I have some plans that I need to implement in those few days. But I saw you just now, right? If Jin Peng finds out about this, he'll probably do something desperate. That's why I had to do this. Normal people would be confused by these words, but Li Yunxin understood. If he was Jin Peng, he would definitely be proud of himself after becoming a grand supreme expert and helping Chen Zhao greatly. He would feel that he was on Chen Zhao's side. Even if he wasn't, he should be friends. If he knew that Chen Ying came to see Li Yunxin but not him, he would definitely think that he had been abandoned. Such an ambitious person wouldn't just wait for death. He would fight like a cornered beast. Chen Ying coming to see him was a secret, but if he were Li Chunfeng, he wouldn't take the risk either. Who knew if the Grand Supreme Rock King had some unexpected tricks up his sleeve? The two of them had always been cautious and prudent when it came to making preparations. They would only be frighteningly bold when it was time to fight with their lives. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. So you did this because I asked the Freemasons to betray me and go to Jin Peng. The reason is very reasonable. Elder Yunshan abandoned them in the past. Now that he found out that I'm working with him, he left. Li Chunfeng walked to the table and sat down. Also, I asked them to bring a message. They said that they know I'm planning to use Yunshan to plot against him. Then didn't you send out the secret of your trump card? I made some minor adjustments to the plan. Li Chunfeng smiled. Since you don't like to plot against him through by Yunxin, I thought I'd do it your way. But I can't let you take the risk alone. If you want to fight to your heart's content, I'll risk my life to accompany you. So I asked you to lure Jin Peng to the sky to talk and use Yunshan to attack him. Now you should really challenge him to a duel. I'll go with you. I'll tell him that since he already knows about my plan to use Yunshan, it'll be hard for us to win if we fight again. Even if we win by a narrow margin, all living beings in the world will die. Since that's the case, we can only try to make peace. Li Yunxin grunted. But since he wants to fight like a cornered beast, he definitely won't believe these words. So I'll go to him as a hostage, Li Chunfeng said solemnly. If I'm in his hands, even if he doesn't believe me, he'll temporarily let his guard down. Then he paused for a moment. But Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He looked like he was thinking seriously. Li Chunfeng had no choice but to say, "Then, I'll immediately ask Yunshan to strike him with lightning." Li Yunxin looked up at him. "Are you serious? You'll die. It's just the most ideal situation." Li Chunfeng smiled faintly. "If I can kill Jin Peng with this strike, I'll die a worthy death. Besides, with you around, how can I really die? This is for you." As he spoke, he took out a scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin hesitated for a moment before unfolding it. It was none other than Li Chuanfeng's self. But this self was not a shadow, nor was it an incarnation. All the essence of his spirit was drawn out. If this thing was drawn into a formation and supplemented with powerful spiritual qi, he could create another spirit like what he did in the city of Wei. With Li Yunxin's current supernatural power, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find another body for this spirit. But at the same time, giving this thing to someone else was also putting his life in the hands of someone else. If Li Yunxin wanted to kill him or harm him, this thing alone could destroy his soul from thousands of miles away. Li Yunxin was slightly moved. I know you don't necessarily believe me. You'll feel that I'm hiding something from you. In fact, there are some things that I haven't told you, but I won't tell you those things now. This is the only way to let you understand that I'm also a human. You'll get tired of hearing me talk about blood and flesh, but it's really in my heart." Li Chunfeng was silent for a long time and said in a low voice, "If I really die because of this, you'll have time to think about it. If you really forgive me after many years, there's still a way for you to see me. I didn't teach you the method of drawing spirit before. I've only taught you bits and pieces. But cultivation has to be done step by step. I've carefully learned it in the painting school before, so my foundation is more solid than yours. Tonight we still have some kung fu. I'll teach you some more." Li Yunxin knew that at least what he said about cultivation was the truth. Cultivation seemed to be a big project. What he had learned and experienced before was just the skeleton. These things helped him advance his realm and his cultivation. But there was also a lot of flesh and blood that was slowly summarized and accumulated by more people. These flesh and blood contain many techniques and more magical uses. He should understand the principle of the method of drawing spirit that Li Chunfeng mentioned, but there were some subtle operations that he couldn't understand. For example, he was a new Grand Shang and had great power, but there were many magical uses that he had to slowly study. He fell silent. Li Chunfeng smiled and said, "Just like before, I'll teach you the technique first." Then in a low voice, he slowly explained some of the key points of this technique. Then, he broke down every detail and explained it slowly. The bright flame floating in the middle of the hall sprinkled dim yellow light, which indeed reminded Li Yunxin of the past. In the big house of the former residence, Li Chunfeng taught him the same way. He was patient and calm. After a quarter of an hour, he explained everything clearly. Then Li Chunfeng looked at him. "Do you understand?" Li Yunxin said subconsciously, "I understand." So, both of them were slightly stunned and fell silent. In the past, every teaching session would end with these two sentences. In the end, Li Yunxin spoke first. He frowned slightly and looked at Li Chuanfeng's face. "You really regret it? What you said before was true." Li Chunfeng opened his mouth, as if he had thousands of words to say. But in the end he only said, "I regret it." Li Yunxin smiled and frowned. Then he smiled and frowned. Finally he let out a long breath. "I won't let you die. In the afternoon, I was walking on the street. And met a father and son. The son wasn't the father's biological son, and the father knew it. He took the son to borrow money, and when he got the money, He took the son to eat a full meal and gambled. At that time, I thought about the relationship between father and son. That gambling addict was like a scum to me, but he still had some feelings for a child who wasn't his biological son. I saw him enter the gambling house. I stood at the door, but I felt very calm. There wasn't even a trace of anger, because I understood one thing at that time. Li Yunxin took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and turned his face slightly. People have sorrows that can't be freed. Bad habits are sorrows that can't be freed. Responsibilities are also sorrows that can't be freed. He remained silent for a long time. You just should have told me earlier. Li Chuanfeng's eyes instantly turned red. I really regret it. Li Yunxin smiled. Never mind. Let's not talk about this. If you were killed by Cloud Mountain's thunder, I would definitely save you. But what if you weren't? If Golden Rock dodged that strike, what would happen next? Li Chunfeng laughed out loud, then wiped his face with his hand again. As if he had finally been forgiven by Li Yunxin, he finally looked happy, not as serious as before. All right, then let's get down to business. It was reasonable for him to be able to dodge that attack. Then let's use this move. Do you still have the scroll I gave you? He was referring to the scroll he gave to Li Yunxin the first time they met, the scroll drawn by him and the painters of the painting school. Li Yunxin took out the scroll. Li Chunfeng pointed at it and said, "Merge this scroll with the scroll I gave you before. Then, the entire Midland will be in your hands. With your current power, you can do what the mother and child plate on Cloud Mountain did. Temporarily bring all natural powers in Midland into the scroll." Back then, Golden Rock dodged a fatal strike, and you immediately used this move. The natural powers around him would be cut off instantly, and his own power would be stagnated. You should have experienced that when you fought against the Lord of Dao under Cloud Mountain. Li Yunxin remembered that as well. Back then he was at a low level. It was Priest Qing Shui who pointed at him from afar, cut off the natural powers around him, and nearly killed him. It wasn't a happy past, but he didn't dwell on it. He only said, "So." As he spoke, he took out the Imperial Heavenly Scripture. The 9 Seas map that Li Chunfeng had given him had already been incorporated into it. Xiao Jiesin was here as well. He raised his hand and pointed at the scroll Li Chunfeng gave him. That scroll immediately transformed into a clear stream of light and merged into the scroll. As a result, the scroll shone brightly, illuminating Li Chuanfeng's face with a different kind of expression. By then, you don't need to worry about me. You have a great helper, and I know he was badly injured in the ocean. At that time, the spiritual energy gathered in the map would be able to restore him to his original state. You two attack him at the same time, while he's weak. There's no reason you can't win. But don't use this method in advance. Otherwise, Golden Rock will sense the change of natural powers. Let that great saint suffer for a while. Chapter 828. Li Yunxin only said, "Okay." Li Chunfeng sighed softly. He seemed to be filled with emotions because of his current attitude, but no matter how many words he wanted to say, they only turned into a few sentences. As long as we are united, there is nothing in this world that we can't solve. Li Yunxin smiled. That's for the best. He turned to look at the round table in front of him and hesitated for a while. Since you've booked this place, is the chef still here? Li Chunfeng was stunned. Then he said repeatedly, "Yes, he's here. What do you want to eat? I'll ask them to bring it over." So after a quarter of an hour, the dishes were served. The two of them ate and drank slowly in the hall, discussing the finer details of the plan they had come up with, so that they might consider it more fully. If anyone saw them, they would think that the two of them had a harmonious relationship, and there was no ill will between them. If they were said to be father and son, probably no one would think that it was out of the ordinary. The atmosphere in the hall was peaceful and calm as the battle was about to begin. It was even a little warm. Li Yunxin didn't leave until the second night watch period. When all the people in Shuanghu City had gone to bed, and the streets were deserted. Li Chunfeng watched him from the window on the second floor. He saw him waving his sleeves and walking in the middle of the street, seemingly happy. He waited until he turned into an alley and disappeared before he let out a sigh of relief. Then he turned around and stared at the table of food and wine in the hall for a while, then walked downstairs. There was no one in the hall on the first floor, but there was some movement in the kitchen. Li Chunfeng lifted the curtain and walked in. He saw the head chef, and a waiter chatting around the chopping board. There were 3 cold dishes on the table. When the 3 saw him, they all straightened up and stopped talking. Li Chunfeng said, "I'll go down for a while." The 3 of them removed the cold plates from the table and pushed them away together. The chopping board was moved away, revealing a secret passage below. Li Chunfeng walked in, but stopped 3 steps down and asked, "Where are the people from the society now?" The head chef said, "In another 3 days, they might reach the territory of the Golden Rock. If his people come to pick them up, it might be faster." Li Chunfeng nodded and walked down. He walked down the stairs. After about 40 steps, the light at the entrance above their heads had already become extremely dim. However, the inside of the passage was not dark. Some of the talismans emitted a glow that illuminated the path like torches. After walking a dozen steps along the flat ground, the view in front of him suddenly became clear. It was a rotunda. It should be as big as the main hall of this restaurant. But instead of tables and chairs, there were cocoon-like objects that were as tall as a person. They stood up and leaned against the wall in a circle. There were about 30 of them. The outer shell of the cocoon was translucent, and 3 of them had faint human-like shadows. It looked like smoke, but it was solidified. Cultivators should be able to tell that it was a soul. In the past, the soul in the cocoon would have been refined and transformed into the wandering soul that Li Yunqin had encountered in the city of Wei. But now this project should have stopped halfway through. They stayed in the cocoon, like insects in amber. In the middle of the hall was a column that reached to the roof. Its surface was smooth like a huge piece of jade. Li Chunfeng walked to the column and reached out to touch it a few times. The column woke up and emitted a faint white light. Then 2 windows popped out. Li Chunfeng tapped on one of the windows. 5 or 6 seconds later, a man's image appeared on the column. "Professor Shen." Li Chunfeng nodded slightly at him. "I've already told Li Yunqin about it." "Oh," Shen Mu replied, and turned to look at something beside him. He seemed to be busy talking at the same time. "I have something to ask you. You said that the smallest unit of energy didn't exist in your world before. Did you think of this yourself, or did the scientific community in your world confirm it? My experimental data doesn't match." "You should," Li Chunfeng interrupted him. "Professor Shen, we'll have time to talk about this later. Answer my question first. Do you know what Chen Zhao and Li Yunqin talked about today? What did Li Yunqin say to him?" Shen Mu blinked. "Huh? What did he say?" Li Chunfeng sighed. "Did you forget? Today, Chen Zhao met Li Yunqin, and he did it through an unusual channel." "Oh, that." Shen Mu waved his hand impatiently. "There's nothing wrong with her. Everything is normal. Don't worry. Just do your own thing. Also, when will Yinshan send Zhao Jin down?" Li Chunfeng shrugged. "You know, we'll have to wait until we're done, when they're convinced that we won't be a threat to them anymore." Shen Mu waved his hand angrily and pointed at Li Chunfeng's nose. If Li Chunfeng was here in person, he would definitely poke the tip of his nose. "I'm so sick of you people. You only know how to plot against each other and waste your time on meaningless things. Don't they know that what we're doing is the optimal solution? As long as they have a bit of logical thinking, they won't worry about any random problems. The world is about to be destroyed, and they're still wasting their time over some trivial things." Li Chunfeng smiled calmly. "We're all ordinary people. Humph, ordinary people can't pretend to be a father and son and plot to kill him at the same time." Shen Mu snorted. "I really admire him. If you guys weren't involved in so many troublesome things, I wouldn't have chosen you. You're a villain and a hypocrite. Why don't you learn from the good people in the world?" Li Chunfeng was silent for a moment and smiled. Good people don't live long, Professor Shin. Alright, let's not talk about this. If there's nothing wrong with Chen Zhao, it should be because Li Yunxin listened to me and didn't say much about her. That means he didn't guard against me either. Shin Mu waved his hand impatiently. I don't have time to listen to you people. What do you want from me? I hope you can guarantee that Chen Zhao and Bai Yanjun won't have any contact with Li Yunxin during this time, Li Chunfeng said. Right now, Lu Gongzan isn't by his side. As long as there are no other factors interfering, I can guarantee that he won't notice anything before the final moment arrives. But if you guys cause trouble... Alright, I got it. Shin Mu frowned. It's simple. Li Zhen is going to die, and they won't have time to care about your business. Li Chunfeng glared at him, and was about to ask again. But Shin Mu had already waved his hand and disappeared. He stared at the pillar and pondered for a while. Slowly, he raised his hand and extinguished the light on the pillar. At the same time, Li Yunxin stood at the corner of the street. He was 120 steps away from the restaurant where Li Chunfeng was staying. He turned into an alley from the main street and disappeared from the sight of the people in the restaurant. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.